Okay, we are going to go ahead and start this meeting. This is the regularly scheduled city council meeting for the city of Glenwood Springs. It is October 5th, 2023. Ryan Hughes, will you do roll call, please?
Mayor Wusso,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dame,
Here.
Councilor Godis,
Here.
Councilor Zelinski,
Present.
Councilor Weimer, Counselor Kaup. Counselor Schachter. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any agenda changes or conflicts this evening? Anything anybody would like to take off from council and then go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, I don't think we need the executive session tonight,
Okay.
and so I'd like to ask that it be removed.
Okay, great. We'll remove that. Any other changes? Okay. Then I'll move on to item number 7, council announcements. Counselor Dem,
Thank you.
hold on 1 second. Oops, there you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick announcement. I forgot to do it last month. The Historical Preservation Commission has a vacancy. So if anybody's interested in helping us shape up a historical district or preserve older buildings, please apply.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Counselor Godus.
Thanks. October 11th is the Colorado Destination Stewardship Strategic Planning Initiative. It's going to be here in Glenwood. I'll send it back out to everybody. You have to actually sign up for it. So they're only going to 5 different places throughout the state, and Glenwood Springs is one of them. So it's called the Destination Stewardship Strategic Planning Initiative. It's from the state's Office of Economic Development and Tourism. I will
Okay.
send it to Steve Boyd.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to take this moment early on to just let everyone know that our regularly scheduled city council meeting that would normally fall on the 3rd Thursday of the month is going to be moved to the 26th. We have other conferences out of town that the majority of us would like to go to and attend. So we're moving that to the 26th. It'll be at the regular time of 6:15. Okay, perfect. Moving on to citizens appearing before council. As a reminder, this is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. And if you're here, you're welcome to speak. You've got 3 minutes. Anyone online? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section and bring it back to council for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Shelley, can you tap your light, please? Thank you. Second. So we have a motion by Counselor Godus and a second by Counselor Kaup. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will now move on to, this is under actions and or presentations. The very first item is the proposed 2024 budget. And we will have Steve Boyd at the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Steve Boyd. I live in Park West and I work here in the building. We're going to go through a quick presentation of what we're working on now. We'll go pretty fast. There's a lot of slides, but don't let that scare you. And then I'll tell you guys what I think you care about in the budget, and then we'll be done. So I'm going to start with Parks and Rec. Parks and Recreation. We hired a new Parks and Rec person this year. We thought we were hiring a director, but we got a Jedi. He's a Parks and Rec Jedi.
True.
Guys experienced and we stole him from Golden. So we're super happy with Rod. They're doing some work on some buildings out there. We just repaved this one. We moved out of the MOC and had to kind of scramble around a little bit. Yes. Oh, well. Okay, that's why nobody was laughing. How do I share this, Ryan?
Yeah, it probably is. Super laughing at you, not.
Do you want us?
Oh, no, I see that. It's not in these.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Guessing.
Well, I've never.
We don't know how to
Screen.
put the video on. White screen, black screen.
Yeah, an expert from planning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure lies.
No, you can start. Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay. You might have to start me.
Do you want a disingenuous after the fact laugh now? See, you were going.
Yeah.
He has a
Okay.
good- we're very
Who wants to come do this? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, I won't go backwards, but trust me, it was funny. Can't go forwards either. Okay, Parks Building, asphalt, had to move out of the MOC. So we're scrambling around and slowly we're kind of getting things taken care of. Rod is also facilities. We consider the airport a facility. We replaced our jet fuel system. That was pretty cool. That was the project from, wow, but we got done. They look great. I'm told they play well, right? Okay. I asked them to send some pictures over about programs, and I could sit here and go through this for a very long time. We did a million things this year. I'll save you that. I will point out, though, that we have this cool gear library that we keep kind of adding to. It gets used a lot. So that's been a good addition that we've put in recently. Let's see, this year we have some new counselors. The ones with the arrows are who they are, in case you can't recognize anybody. One of the things that I wanted to kind of point out to the public, if anybody is watching, is all the outreach that we did this year, including city council. I mean, you guys are everywhere. And if you look at the number of meetings that you guys go to, and again, I could go over and over and over all the things that you guys do. Congresswoman Boebert was here. She's sitting, can you see my, yeah, she's sitting right over here, right over here in the pink over there. Something funny happened. If you were there, you remember that. That was fun. We put CDOT on the spot. The canyon was closed like every 20 minutes for a while. I mean, it was getting pretty rough. So we brought him in. That's the CDOT, what is it? Executive director, is that what they call it? And so Jonathan was in the room asking some questions. So we got those answered. Traffic stuff, you guys did all kinds of stuff. And we did a lot, probably more outreach than I've ever seen in this community this year. Remember that?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Okay, public safety. Here's our cops. Sean May, this Sean May guy, everybody loves this guy.
He's amazing.
He's our school resource officer and the kids love him. I'm like, he's one of these guys that just found the right place and the right thing in life. He's awesome. Everybody loves him. He's doing a great job for us. These guys spend a lot of time out in schools, talking to kids, doing safety, active threat training, that kind of stuff. The way you help them is that you replace their fleet. And we did that this year, 3 new cars this year. You replace their equipment. You replace their new dog. This is Reese. He's badass. He's man's best friend until Sergeant Gobo tells him not to be, and then he's not your best friend anymore. Fire. We had an interesting year in fire this year. We had a house on fire, vehicle on fire, bigger vehicle on fire. Canyon Creek was on fire, No Name on fire, Midland Circle on fire, Mountain Shadows on fire. There was just a lot of stuff to do. And you should be really proud of these guys, because through all of this, you don't always have words, right? I mean, what are you going to do? You don't know what you're going to see next. But these guys do spend time thinking things through, and they're doing a new strategic plan. They're in a classroom. They're grinding on stuff. They're working both with their hands and their heads. So they do a great job for us. We're super proud of them. Okay, little public works. This is our fleet shop. Did a little bit of improvement there. It looks awesome in there. It's right down by, what was it? Carl Malone, is that right? The toy factory down there. Repaved some stuff and shorted up a little bit. So that's pretty cool. You guys remember this one? Yep. All the electric lines going down and stuff. So the resources that you guys appropriate is what fixed that. I don't really know what's happening here, but it looks pretty cool. And I kind of wish that I could do whatever they're doing, but whatever. That's a big hole. You wonder, what's that big hole? Well, it's a big lift station, but it's just the right size lift station. Big hole, right size lift station. We're trying to build this stuff to win, right? So that we can grow into it and meet our needs going forward. We did some streets this year. That's Oriole, Caesar, Lake from one way, Lake from the other way. Here's Meadowlark. This is the Meadows. It's not a very good picture because there were people behind me. I'm like, just wait. Taking my picture. Soper's Drive, that's out by the school. And we have a whole new crossing out there that seems like it's working pretty well. We have a DOC, which is, it just got built. We took the keys in June, and that's the Doug Operations Center, our electric building here. We have to call it the Doug Operations Center because we confuse it with EOC, which is Emergency Operations Center. So it's the Doug Operations Center. Continued broadband build out. We have a landfill. That's Liz. She is our landfill chief.
She's a Jedi too.
She's a Jedi too. That's absolutely right.
Mhm.
And so she's got, that's a BAS, big S scale, right? We replaced the scale this year. And it was an interesting thing because when it came from, I think Utah, is that right? Utah?
Somewhere there, yeah.
Somewhere there. It was like this much too big. So it went back to Utah. It was pretty funny. I don't know. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm like, I'm glad I didn't pick that one. We have a screener that Liz has not let me drive yet. In fact, it's been a rough year in the landfill because I don't think I've rolled anything over up there. Although I've tried a few times. Mud slide. Mud stop sliding. We moved the mud all the way across town. We stored it out by the rodeo grounds out there. 15,000 cubic yards last I heard. Is that about right? That's a lot of mud. This is your city clerk. And I put this in here for two reasons. One, you can see how high the mud was. I mean, this flow was a major thing. This is a telephone pole, and I don't know how it held up. Ryan went out there with us, and it was pretty funny because he's out there with his little magnifying glasses, little protractor and stuff, trying to get all the data that he needs to submit everything to CIRSA. He got us almost $250,000 reimbursed on an insurance claim.
Look at all these Jedis.
We didn't even know we'd get anything. So good job, Ryan. He's pretty tenacious. He'll like shake the money out of the tree. Administration, here's the things that we worked on. Vet provided to you another clean audit. That's probably the most important thing that we could do. So thank you, Yvette. You guys have no idea what goes into that. There's no way you could know. We had a public request or two. ERP implementation, we're on the third phase. It's the same picture every year. We're just wearing different clothes, you know. We'll get there eventually. This is DTS, ViewWorks, asset management. It's all GIS based. We've got it in now. We're using it. It's going to make us a lot more efficient. So we're psyched about that. Matt and his team have been working hard. So is Rod and his team for that matter. Oh, public records request, sorry. We have a strip mine. Not. There were some pretty smart people that have been doing some pretty smart things over the last couple of years. And, you know, it feels good to be able to put that. I don't mean to jinx it, but we have won at every turn, I think, on that one. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I'll stop. Here's your strategic goals. That was good. City government, infrastructure, quality of life, economic development, public safety. Everybody's got a strategic plan, strategic goals. Nobody uses them, I know, but I gotta say, I kind of like these. I mean, they make sense to me. And when we look at what we're doing, we keep those in mind, and they really do kind of drive what we do. They're in every staff report. So here's what's in your budget. 24 funds, 2 of them are new, right? We've got housing and 2C money, or that's the same thing, trash, housing and trash. 18 separate general fund departments, $100 million appropriation. So if somebody asks, how big is the budget? That's the answer, $100 million, a little more, maybe 103. Available reserves at the end of 2024. This is what's forecasted. Available means they're available to you guys to spend. They are not obligated to anything. They're not restricted for anything. It doesn't mean that we've got tons and tons of money and no projects. There's all kinds of stuff to do with that, but we intentionally left some money, you know, in capital projects and A&I because there are decisions that you guys can make better, I think, as you have a little bit more information. So we just left that in. You've got 200 full-time employees with a dollar sign next to it. I could try to play that off somehow, but that was just insane. 27.3 in salaries and benefits is what you guys spend. That's $1 million. We added 5 additional employees this year. We try very, very hard not to do that. We really try not to add a lot of employees because it's the thing that's the hardest to control going forward. But we have a housing manager, that's 2C, and we're going to split that based on the recommendation of that group. Public Works needs terribly an administrative assistant, because their guys are spending too much time doing things that they're really not the best at and shouldn't really be doing. We moved 2 guest services reps at the community center from part-time to full-time so that we have coverage there. And then Gary needed a fire inspector so that we can kind of keep up with that and you guys don't hear complaints all over the place from everybody in the world. A couple of things. Streets. There's $3.6 million in capital improvements in your streets this year. $2.3 million in maintenance. So that's $5.9 million that we're putting straight into the streets. That does not include streetscape stuff that we're doing, like with the DDA 6th Street, Cooper Street, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. General fund, $27.6 million total appropriation. 60% of that is people, essentially. 40% of your general fund goes to public safety, between police and fire. That's our biggest expenditure. If you add parks and streets, you're at another 20%. So that's about 60%. The rest of it goes to, departments and things that we run, like administration and the clerk and the court and IT and HR and legal, and it goes on and on. Community development, engineering, building, all that kind of stuff is the other 40%. Reserves of 37.5% of 2025 forecasted expenditures. Our target is somewhere between 35 and 45. So we're in good shape there. Revenues greater than expenses. I should just drop the mic right there. That was hard. This year was hard, but we got there. We're like up, like $1,000 or something? So good. We didn't know if we would make it. It took us all the way till here to make it, but I think this is a responsible budget. I think that it's a thoughtful budget. I think that you guys are putting the money that the taxpayers and fee payers have given to you to work, but I think you still have enough in reserves to do what you need to do. I think you should have a ton of confidence in your department heads. They bring budgets in every single year. A couple of them have threatened to beat me up. The chief wanted to tase me at one point when I was trying to squeeze him really hard. So, but we got there. And I think that this is probably both the most correctly and accurately forecasted and transparent budget that we've done in the time that we've been here. So I'm not afraid of anything in here. I know there's a lot of scrutiny and stuff, but we feel good about this budget. So with that, I will move on and let somebody smarter than me take the next one. Thanks, guys.
Can I ask you one quick question before you walk away? The 37.5%, what does that equate to as far as, is it as a portion of what you estimate of like, is it like $37 million off of $100 million budget? What do you?
It's next year, so 2025's estimated expenditures.
Okay.
So we calculate that at 2024 and then we add 5% to it. So it's that percentage. So about $11.9 million, and that's about 37.5% of
Okay, thank you. I just
lumber.
wanted to clarify that for the
I think
public
that's a good
because,
clarification.
yeah, okay. thank
Anything
you.
else? All good, buddy? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Perfect.
photos a lot.
That was a great
That's great.
presentation. Would you send it to us?
I'll send it to you because I took all the funny stuff out. There was a lot of funny stuff in here, but it's just not the right time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Hold on, turn your mic up, please. Counselor Cap.
Will the budget be posted online?
So
This
yeah, good
draft.
question. I'm glad that you reminded me of that. So yes, we're going to post the budget online.
Great.
I have got together a few pages of just sort of, narrative, and it'll make it a lot easier for you guys to read. I'm not quite done with it yet.
Pie
I'll
charts?
post that next week sometime. So when I do that, I'll let you know. And if you're going to spend time with the budget and kind of looking through things, you might want to wait for that because it'll really help. All that we're really going to post tonight is the budget, which is just a bunch of numbers. So thank you for
Great,
reminding me of
thank
that.
you.
Okay. Good.
Any other questions for Steve? Okay, thank you to the whole finance department. We so appreciate all your efforts and we're so fortunate to have you all with your expertise. Thank you. Back
Okay.
to council. We're moving on to item number 11, Roaring Fork School District Mental Health in Schools Update and Funding Requests. Hello.
I'm just going to stay here long enough to introduce my friend, Dr. Anna Cole, speaking
Okay.
on behalf of the school district. So
Perfect.
One-
Thank you.
Thanks. And actually with me is Lindsay Henschel, the assistant principal at Glenwood Springs High School. So we're really grateful to be here tonight to provide some updates and then a continued request to continue the investments in school-based mental health that you all have contributed for the last couple of years, and this is using your tobacco and marijuana tax funding. I think it was nice to see the budget and some of your priorities, and I think this work ties really nicely to your commitments around public safety and quality of life, I think is really what we're targeting here in this work that's really around prevention and responsiveness to the mental well-being of our kids. The school-based mental health, through the partnerships we've had with City of Glenwood Springs, through some of our grant funding, we've been able to say now, we're in the second year of being able to say that every child in a public school in the City of Glenwood Springs has access to a free school-based mental health provider. That's pretty powerful. And as the Roaring Fork schools, we've also brought into this work Yampa Mountain, which isn't actually a Roaring Fork School District school, but we're also representing Yampa in this request, and Two Rivers Community School. Are all kind of on board and sharing this request. We're not going to go through the slides. They're in your packet. I just want to highlight, I think in the 23-24 school year, there were over 5,500 touch points with kids from the providers in the schools. We're talking probably somewhere between 700 and 800 students are accessing these resources. The typical number of contacts is somewhere between 6 to 8 touch points. But the needs really remain, and you saw some of our data from the 2021 Healthy Kids Colorado survey. That's really our best data source to really track the trends that our kids report to us around behaviors and well-being. The kids will be taking that survey again this fall. We won't get the data until next summer, but we'll definitely be able to bring that to you in about a year or so. But also really delighted to have Lindsay here because she really represents a fifth of the Roaring Fork School District students are at Glenwood Springs High School.
Wow.
So although we have 12 schools, a fifth of our kids are at your school right in the heart of Glenwood Springs. And Lindsay represents that, this program. And there have been 2 school-based mental health providers. So I just would love for her to share a little bit of what the impact has been of those providers on the school and the kids' well-being.
Sure. All right. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I got an email on Monday from a parent whose child graduated last year at Glenwood family. And it was a really complimentary email, just thanking me for working with their kid last year through some super challenging circumstances, including at one point being a runaway substance use. And it was very kind of her to credit me working with him, but really we have an amazing team, and a huge part of that team that kid is doing well this year is sober and stable and able to be a productive part of the community, was that the child was able to meet weekly for check-ins with Hope Center clinician in our school. In addition to that, when we had some crisis situations, we were able to have someone who was an expert on hand. We didn't have to call and wait for someone to come in. We were able to respond very quickly and create safe circumstances in the school. I know that people might not be familiar with what does that mean, like kids are in crisis, or like what's the frequency of that? I don't have exact numbers, but I can tell you in the past 2 weeks, we've had 3 kids hospitalized, 1 return, and then 2 hopefully will return next week. It is critical to put safety plans in place for those kids. And the mental health clinicians are the people who can do that the best, who can talk to the hospitals, work with external providers here and get that set up in the school. When we don't have those kinds of resources, that falls on principals. That's not my direct training. And that keeps me from doing what is my direct work, which is supporting teachers, the safety of the school with discipline, following up on attendance, things like that. So I feel like this investment, I think Anna said it really well, like the well-being, we are able to do intervention very quickly. It's completely different to be able to take a student who, let's say, just got in a fight
And then because of that, you have a deep conversation, you find out there's a lot of other things going on. It's very different to be able to take that student up a flight of stairs and meet someone, set up an intake that can happen the next day during their study hall. And then they have that relationship for 6 weeks or how they're stable, while they're able to stabilize that situation. If they need more long-term support, the person in the school is able to connect them to someone else who can provide that in the community, including, we're very, very grateful for Mountain Family and our school-based health center and their providers. And Pathfinders also comes into our school. Do want to shout them all out, they're great. But being able to do that versus trying to call a family, ask them to find someone, ask them to set up an appointment. A lot of people in the Valley are totally booked to get into mental health therapy. There's a huge delay, and that delay can mean that kid does not get any services. So these clinicians are just a really critical part of what we do to intervene in a lot of circumstances, and to prevent crisis and to ensure more kids are in classes more of the time, able to thrive. So we're super appreciative. I can't imagine them not being there. They are busy every hour, every minute of every day that they are in the building. And I guess the last thing I would say is the clinicians, because they meet with our cares and concerns team, which is our administrators, our attendance interventionists, and our counselors, they also provide programmatic kind of consultation. So we can look at issues, kind of what are issues coming up, and then what are appropriate ways to be responding to those issues as a school. Again, tying us into external resources when we need to provide additional support for different risk factors that come up. And we also love Officer Sean.
Thanks, Lindsay. And I'm just delighted that Lindsay was here because her perspective on the ground of really working with these providers every day, I think provides a really nice lens compared to maybe just the data that I tend to bring you all. So we're happy to answer questions. Our request is the same investment that you were able to provide last year. You would have noticed in the slides that the grant that we'd had for a couple of years we can no longer use that to fund middle schools and high schools. So we kind of flipped the way we're allocating those investments, which means then the grants would cover the positions at Sopris, Glenwood Springs Elementary, Two Rivers, and then the city of Glenwood Springs could cover the other middle and high school costs. So that's kind of what we're hoping and what we're asking for, but happy to take questions, especially with Lindsay here. A few questions about what it looks like.
Bring it back to council. Any questions from council? Councilor Weimer.
Thank you, ladies. Good to have you here. A couple of questions I have. This stuff is just so incredibly important. And where were you 40 years ago? When, however, I want to ask if the funding covers anything around like reducing the stigma of seeking and taking care of your mental health, and do any of the funds go toward taking care of the caregivers? Because the level of stress, right, and constant stress. I just wonder, I'm just kind of curious as to if and how some of the money goes maybe in those directions.
Maybe Lindsay could speak to the stigma component because I think you're living it with your kids. And I would say that the funding is actually direct covering salaries and contracts for us. So
Okay.
we do, as a district, provide supports for teachers and mental health providers. And we often actually contract independently with the Aspen Hope Center to provide check-in circles for staff.
Okay.
That is other funding streams and most often internal district funds for that.
Got it. Okay.
But so this money actually just goes 100% to the contracts and salaries.
Just the salaries.
But your question about stigma, I'm wondering, Lindsay, if you could address that.
I do think having the clinicians in the building versus being sent out somewhere, so having it be an integrated part, while not maybe directly addressing stigma, makes it more normal. It is normalized in the environment, and having the clinicians on hand, typically they will take some time. They won't be able to visit every class in the school, but for all of our 9th and 10th graders, they're in a program called tutorial. And the clinicians will take 2 days and visit those. So introduce themselves, talk about what they do, talk about ways to take care of yourself individually, and then when you might consider seeking mental health services as well. So I believe that that type of work, because it becomes part of the conversation, because it's out there and everybody is hearing and seeing. And again, these are adults who are part of our community. They dress up on our Halloween days, they eat lunch and walk around the school. I do think that that helps to address some of the stigma. But again, the money is directly for the position. It's not going to any type of specific program or books or something like that.
Thank you.
Counselor Cow.
Hi, thanks for being here, both of you. I just had a question on your funding. So the funding, it looks like from the CDE was reduced about 150,000, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and our
Okay.
actual ask was larger because we were asking on behalf of the entire district, but the component that would apply to the Glenwood schools.
For Glenwood was lower. Are there other sources of funding that you guys are able to pursue?
We are constantly on the lookout. We were,
Okay.
Behavioral Health Administration from the state often puts grants out. We were completed and ready to send, and then they withdrew the grant last spring and the funding last spring. So we're always looking for other sources of funding because it does feel unstable.
Right, to keep the program going. Okay, thanks.
Counselor Zelinski.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I mean, it's incredibly important work and there's no doubt about that. I'm just curious why the school contribution is so low in comparison to the other funding sources. That's not, I mean, it doesn't even look like that's like one position. So I'm just curious if you could elaborate on that for me.
Sure. I would say as the Roaring Fork Schools, I think we constantly are, my normal position is Chief of Student and Family Services. And so I work with a lot of partnerships to expand student and family access to wraparound support services through partnerships, through grants, through our Family Resource Center. And so we really take a lot of responsibility in the district, especially in our rural schools, is seeing our schools as access points for social services, frankly. But we're always kind of on this interesting slope of like, where does our K-12 funding and obligations to use that money for the educational mission that we have, when does that stop and when are we moving into health and integrated health services, mental and behavioral health? It's really beyond our scope, where we don't have that core funding. And so we allocate general funds to counselors in schools. Every school has a school counselor. Their model has a component. They do college and career. They do scheduling and academic support. And then the kind of third tier of their work is social and emotional supports and student well-being. So we fully fund all of those positions in the schools. This is kind of another layer of support that is really for us. And I think over time, what we've learned is that, and I think Lindsay stated it so well, like our training as educators is pretty solidly in that, building relationships with kids, helping them learn on instruction and content delivery, supporting student academic achievement and growth. And this really moves into a clinical world that is not our expertise. We don't do a great job, I think, to some of those questions of like supporting the service providers. I don't even know that as a district, we quite know the needs of mental health providers and what they really need when they're working with kids every day in and day out. And that's why I think Hope Center has been really an amazing partnership for us because they provide those supports. But it does enter this area where I think as a district, we're really, we grapple with like, what is our obligation to these positions? And how does that stack up against other components where we feel like we're getting into mission drift or misallocation of our general funding and taking money out of classrooms to put it into mental health, school resource officers, and different sorts of wraparound supports. And so it's a good question. And I think it's one that we're tangling with. And right now, this layer of support is really pulled together through grants, through our cities. I mean, every city or town of Carbondale, town of Basalt, Eagle County, all help us get to this, our goal of having a mental behavioral health provider in every school. But that question of like, where's the school district in it, is we're kind of grappling with, and it would mean we'd let go of something else.
Thank you.
Counselor Schachter.
Thank you. Well,
Oh, try one more time. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And I know in local parentis, the school responsibility has gone way beyond resources. That's clear. A couple questions. Do the staffing recommendations and the FTE numbers here, are they recommended by the Hope Center or do they come internally from you? How does that get determined?
Great question. It's a mixture of Hope Center and there are some like general school-based mental health provider staffing recommendations. They're, as you might expect from kind of profession-based associations, we're not quite hitting those. They would want school-based mental health providers much closer to probably 1 to like 250, 1 to 300 students. And we're not there. I think we're more at about 1 to 500 with our current model. And that's really, I mean, I think for us in this work we've done with the Hope Center over many years now is trying to find what would be that sweet spot of staffing. It's hard for us in the smaller schools. And I think one of the things we've learned too is that it really helps to have that provider full-time at the school, not split between multiple schools, not moving across our towns or valleys so that they really are fully embedded in the staff.
I think I heard you understand trying to keep this out of your general fund in general. So does that mean that these emotional support services aren't part of interest-based bargaining either because they're not part of the general fund? You keep that out of the loop?
Right, that most of these positions, especially in the city of Glenwood Springs, are contracts with Hope Center. So the
Right.
providers that Lindsay's working with work for the Hope Center.
And just for clarification, is it Riverside School or Riverview School? Is that all Glenwood kids? Is that Glenwood and Carbondale?
You know, we consider that like all those kids in that service area feed Glenwood Springs High School. and
Okay.
So we consider it part
Consider it
of
Glenwood.
Glenwood.
All right. And what happens to the program operation if the funding isn't increased?
Yeah, we talked to Hope Center a lot about this. We would probably scale down. We've tried to set this up and I always try to make sure that we have enough funding in our general fund that we wouldn't pull those positions in a school year. That we would follow through a school year in keeping positions staffed. But we would have to scale down. We just right now don't have the funding structure to staff this kind of work up to the extent that we feel we need it. So it would be probably a hodgepodge of trying to sustain some level of service.
Thank you.
Counselor Godus.
Hi, thanks guys for all you do. You mentioned town of Carbondale, town of Basalt, Eagle County. Is Garfield County, which actually has a public health department, are they contributing to this at all?
They're not, and one of their priorities has always been, it needs to be a collective ask across the 3 districts. And that's taken a little bit of time in terms of, I think, the readiness for Garfield RE2 and 16 to be interested in school-based mental health. And I would say probably in the last 9 to 12 months with a lot of work that both Garfield 16 and RE2 have done with family resource centers, with having more partnerships with Hope Center. I think they're doing some crisis contracts with the Hope Center. Their level of readiness and interest has increased. And so this past summer was really the first time that we collectively as 3 districts went to the commissioners and said, can we talk to you more about this? Our initial response was just go through the the human services grant process, which was a little disappointing. And so we are kind of in a phase of trying to like regroup, reorganize. As a collective, though, I will say to the question of like, are we looking for other funding? We have applied collectively as our Garfield County school districts, as rural school districts, for this kind of school-based mental health and kind of social services support. We were unsuccessful in a really gigantic grant we wrote kind of right before COVID, but are still, again, kind of in that regrouping. And we really see that there's some collective power in the alignment that I think we've finally hit in terms of seeing our schools as those critical access points. So we're not giving up on Garfield County yet. I think we're just in a bit of a pause and trying to reorganize how we're going to approach that.
Thank
you. Okay. I'm going to bring it back to council for a motion, if there is one. Counselor Cow.
I'm going to make a motion just to get the conversation started. And I will move that we support the Roaring Fork School District mental health programs at the same level that we supported them in 2023. Yes. And that we do appropriate the money as recommended in the staff recommendations with 10,000 from the marijuana fund and then 120 from the tobacco fund. And that leaves a reserves of 40,000 and 45,000 in each of those funds.
Second.
And if I could make just a couple of
Absolutely.
comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna have, would you like to comment as well after? Okay, so Counselor Kell.
And I do make this because I very much support the programs. And, you know, I believe when we pass these taxes, when we pass the tobacco tax and when we pass the marijuana tax, there was a lot of talk on council about how these taxes specifically would go to support our youth in the community. So we really want to see that. They also support emergency services in the community. I do have some concerns, though. By doing this, we would be drawing down the reserves to a lower level, to the level such that it would be not sustainable for us to make that level of funding for the subsequent year. So just so that you guys are well aware of that, that hopefully Garfield County will step up or some other sources might be available. But I would like to see us, you know, this program is relatively new. I'd like to see it keep building and just get on a more sustainable footing so that we can continue to support it.
Counselor Zelinski.
I'm just gonna reiterate, that was exactly where I was going with it, was I was looking at this and, this is such a really important resource and it should be a priority. Post-COVID, I've seen, you know, just socially, just, you know, like just kind of in the community with my expert view, I've seen just a lot of kids that seem like they're just barely keeping it together. And so I think that it would be a tragedy to remove any of these resources. But fiscally, I'm concerned about our ability to support this and take such a big responsibility in supporting this from these budgeted monies. And so, you know, I would say that in any way, if we can help support moving that forward and finding additional, not alternative, but additional funding sources, that would be fantastic.
Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, I think, you know, the county has $85 million in their reserves. I think that it's, that standard of every district in the county is that's a new one that I've not heard yet, because that doesn't apply to transportation, doesn't apply to a lot of other things. So I think I will support the motion gladly and proudly, but I think for next year, I would want to see the county come in as a real and significant partner, regardless of whatever their policy is, because the success of the kids in RE1, their mental health should not be dependent on RE16's willingness or ability to participate at an equal level. I think that is grossly unfair. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here and kind of echo my fellow counselors and say that big picture, I would love to see our money better allocated. And when I say better, I think that if you guys could work with your grant writers, look for opportunities for matches, you know, that would kind of make our money go a little bit further. I see this as absolutely necessary. I so appreciate that it's in the schools. I will support this. I also feel like the tax, the marijuana and the tobacco tax, that's what it was proposed to do. I went and looked up some statistics today, and almost 30% of high school students in Colorado say that they use some type of tobacco. Like it couldn't be a better appropriate use than to stop those lifetime habits right now. And if they have the support they need, I don't need to pontificate up here. Big picture, I just want to see that we don't have to say no in future. So if you guys can work with us in order to kind of insulate the program and better use our funds, I would love to see that. So Counselor Schachter.
No, I echo the support and the value of the program. And I see without our funding, there's a pretty big hole in the budget the flip side is it's not, we can't continue this. And marijuana taxes are likely to drop. We don't know about tobacco. And I don't know what kind of, and it sounds like there should be more sources available. What I'm not sure of, and I don't know the answer, is if we didn't meet this fully, if we meant this partially, because we can always make the allocation later in the year and maybe created some pressure with participation, would we and the school district and other possible sources be more likely to step up? I don't know the answer, but and I'll support the motion, but I'm more inclined to say, what if we did part of it now and reviewed it later in the year with the district to see what other sources came to bear and pressures?
Counselor Cow.
And I appreciate that. I thought of that actually before I made the motion. And I think if we fund it fully this year, I guess I'm thinking we're pushing that out a year, because we do know that we can't fund at the same level in the subsequent year. We just don't have the revenue coming up. The question I would put to financial staff is, what level would be appropriate for us to fund on an annual basis that we could kind of sustain and maybe work towards that. But that gives another year to identify other funding sources, possibly use the money we're putting in as matching to really leverage those funds.
So I think that there's a lot of competition for these funds, right? And it's hard to make a long-term commitment in this situation. You guys are going to have different priorities in different years. I would say that sitting here right now, if our revenues continue to stay about where they are, I'm pretty comfortable with $130,000. I agree that 260 is a very difficult, commitment to make now without somebody else jumping in jumping in shoulder to shoulder with us.
Yeah, because we are dipping into reserves. So
I'm going to
Okay,
ask them one
thanks.
quick question too. With the mill levy coming up, does that not equate to more money fiscally for you guys?
It doesn't, and the mill levy's kind of over for us. We
Yeah.
can't get any more. And our mill levies are always allocated to really specific purposes.
Okay.
And so they have different funding directions that we have to go with everything. And the last one that we have is really focused on staff salaries
Okay.
and professional pathways for staff. So none of that funding can be used for school-based mental health.
And we'll obviously move forward here, but is it possible for you guys to go back and just let the powers that be know kind of where we are with this, that we would love to continue, but we have parameters and some challenges ourselves?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. I mean, I am the power that be right now.
Yeah.
You're acting.
No, I know. No.
Your grant writer, you're looking at her.
Okay.
And so we run a really small
Okay.
central office. We
Okay.
don't
That's
actually have a
perfect.
grant writer.
Okay.
We wear lots of hats. And so, yeah, no, I
Okay.
mean, absolutely. And we're always, again, like I said, this is definitely we're always looking out ahead and again, trying not to pull the rug out from under our schools. We're asking really big questions, especially now, about the way we think about safety and security in our schools. You can look forward to probably some community conversations this winter about that, especially with town councils, when we think about our partnerships with school resource officers, with mental health, and trying to really get a better hold on our vision for school health, like school safety and security, and really what that should look like, and then how we support that as a broad community, knowing that, in the city of Glenwood Springs, any given day, the highest population of your citizens is at Lindsay's school. And so how do we all wrap around to support the safety and security and well-being of those citizens from the city?
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Counselor Gotis.
Just a comment, Dr. Cole, you guys have had a challenging couple months in a lot of ways. and
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think, I'll just speak on behalf of myself, but I think a lot of the community really appreciates the work you're doing in this really trying time for the school district. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for stepping into what you're doing. And God bless.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
It's
you.
an honor. I get to work with amazing people and support really important work. So it is a pleasure to get to support.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the question.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Thank you both so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
We appreciate all you do. Okay. We'll move on to item number 12, which is the Middle Colorado Watershed Council Memorandum of Understanding. Do we have someone here to present that, or are we doing it digitally or remotely?
I think it's just, yeah. well,
Okay.
It's
great.
actually Steve that's presenting. It's the name on the memo. You'll remember a couple of weeks ago, we had a presentation by Middle Watershed Council. You've seen a very similar MOU to this that we did on the Roaring Fork River. The form is primarily generated by the BLM. The only reason it was not on the consent agenda is that you will note in the staff report, there's a request for flexibility on minor changes approved by the mayor, the interim manager, and myself. Just this goes through a bunch of jurisdictions. It'll have some little changes along the way. I don't want to have to bring it back to you guys again. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Counselor Gotis.
I move to approve, subject to final review of the mayor, interim city manager and city attorney to account for non-substantive changes that may be made as various jurisdictions approve to avoid the needing to bring a revised version back to council from the staff recommendations.
And I second.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and, are there any questions? Is there any comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the question then.
Two for two, it's unanimous.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. And also thank you to our presenters from the Middle Colorado Watershed a couple weeks ago. So moving on to item 13, this is the fee waiver request for Glenwood Gardens project.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. My name is Watkins Fultgray. I'm a senior planner. And this request is for a waiver of fees that the city normally charges for new development. This development is a proposal on Highway 6, 131 units is how it's being conceptualized. I don't have a slide deck, by the way. I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the project a little bit. And then we have a representative from Cohen Esri, who's the development company, here with us tonight. Staff has been working with Lisa and other members of her team over the last few months to kind of lay the groundwork for an application. But to get to the application, they have some work to do to make it pencil out. And so this is part of the task. This is part of the question before you all tonight. This project, it would be deeply affordable. This would be the kind of affordability that the free market doesn't provide here in Glenwood. And it's the kind of thing that doesn't materialize very often here. It would support, it would be affordable to restaurant workers, retail workers, even up to teachers and other positions like that. And so that's all it's great. That's something that we're supportive of. Obviously it comes with a financial commitment though. I'm going to defer questions that are specific about our budget and those kind of numbers to, I think, Steve and Carl. But I'm happy to take any other questions about this project. And obviously we have a representative from the company who would also like to talk to you guys tonight.
I would just jump in and say that this project and the project proponent, we'll talk about it as a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit program. And so as part of the application process with CHAFA at the state level, to make that in a competitive application, they need to see typically local jurisdiction buy into the project at some financial level of some sort. And so that's part of why you are seeing it before you would see, say, a development application and what it would look like. We're not here to talk about those kinds of specifics tonight because we're really talking about supporting an application for that tax credit program with CHAFA.
Okay, Counselor Zelinski.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions and I'm assuming these are appropriate to this part of the conversation. I was looking at the vouchers. So is that something that's like a one-time, or do those vouchers go with those units in perpetuity or for the 35 years of affordability?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question for the proponent or applicant when they get up here to really describe that program in better detail than I will.
Okay, and then the other was in the number of units. Do we have any breakdown of the like number of bedroom units? So how many are studios, how many are one, how many are two, and are there any three?
At least I don't have that breakdown. I have a breakdown that we can share in terms of AMI.
Yep, I got all that. I just was curious because, part of what we're trying to accomplish with our affordability is to have more options for families and young professionals and things like, and so I think that that's relevant to the level of support that I feel for this. And then the only other question I had, I was just curious about like how these fees are used. So for instance, the Parkland fee, is that something like that only goes to property acquisition, or can that go to maintenance of existing parkland resources?
It goes to a public space that's for the good of the population. So parks and replacing equipment and
So, okay,
that kind of stuff.
thank you very much.
Counselor Gotis.
Just a question for, I guess, everybody. We are not asking questions or getting into what the project is, if it's, I mean, we're going to have another review. Is that correct? So just level set us, Carl, on what we're actually addressing and what we're not, more or less.
Right, yeah. So this, we're really talking about whether there's a level of support for this kind of a low income tax credit project at the AMIs that are being described. Things like bedroom counts, final designs, all of that will come through a normal development review process, public hearings, charrettes, the whole thing that the code requires. This is really about just the level of support that the city has for this kind of affordability application at the state level.
Counselor Schechter. Okay, well, it's okay. It happens to the best of us.
Thank you. That answered part of my question. The other parts are, we had a LIHTC proposal in West Glenwood. They didn't win the LIHTC designation. They did, it's almost completed, I believe, and they did some inclusionary. My question is, in helping the application process, if we choose to grant some waivers and the developer does not succeed in the LIHTC application and still develops the property, what happens? Are those waivers only
Yeah, those
contingent on
waivers-
LIHTC?
Yeah, it's totally
Okay.
contingent on this specific LIHTC application. If they don't, and by way of example, that, sorry, I'm distracted. That the project that you're talking about in West Glenwood came back in, we had a different conversation about waivers and support from the city.
Okay.
So this is only specific to the
Just
LIHTC
wanted to
deal.
clarify that. And the other question is how did you come up with the minimum requirement? Is that based on other successful applications, or what is a reasonable show of support? Just a question there.
I believe what we did was half of the parkland dedication fee in lieu, half of the, and then I think we waived public art, but left some of the other ones. I don't know, Steve, can you talk a little more about how you arrived at that?
No, just kidding. We kind of backed into a number that we thought was reasonable and fair and would be useful to us. As you guys know, I'm always, thinking about our general fund where it's, we can least afford it. So we backed into a number that we thought was fair and put it in the funds where we thought we could afford it most.
All right, because it does have an ongoing forever impact on our general fund. And I just might ask if either Carl or Watkins, is there a number where it become, if we drop below this minimum, is there a number where the state says, hey, this is not a serious offer?
I have no idea. I've got to be really honest. I mean, there's an art form to all of this.
What
a little
level?
bit. We saw a lot of successful LIHTC projects in this last round in a number of the jurisdictions I work in. Support levels were all over the board. I mean, everybody was supporting, but it wasn't like 100% waivers or 50. There was no specifics.
No.
And I think the applicant has a great deal of experience doing these kinds of applications and can probably speak to that question better than me.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I'm continuing in questions to staff. Make sure that you're lit up for staff questions. Counselor Cap.
Okay, have we written a letter of support for this project to Chaffee yet?
I don't believe we have. I think that's part of what this is whether or not we support fee waivers and support the project.
Okay, just fee waivers, but would Would a letter go with
Certainly,
it?
a
I guess
letter of
that's-
support always helps and is kind of expected.
Okay.
It's a little bit of the, so that's great, you support it, but are you in it?
But having the money behind it all.
Right.
Yep, great.
Counselor Dim.
Thank you. Does the money have to come in form of fee waivers? Or could this be a 2C cash injection?
Yeah, we talked about that and it can't be 2C. And the reason for that is because these are federal tax credits. And so there are certain housing guidelines about availability to everybody. And our 2C money is restricted to very specifically to Glenwood area workers and workforce housing. And so that's in conflict with the federal regulations. So we can't really use 2C in this instance. Because I can guarantee you the federal government is not going to change its.
I'm pretty sure, but the double up question on that. So this project would not just be for Glenwood workforce.
It would not, but what I think what I would say is that you need to recognize that the AMIs that they are proposing are lower than anything else we will see probably. It is
Ever.
remarkable that we have some, I think 30 or 40% AMI, which is really hard to hit without that federal tax credit.
Right, and that brings me actually to my next question. I don't know if that's for the applicant or you, but there is some really low AMIs in there, and as they proceed with the tax credits and our fee waivers and wherever else they're gonna get money, if they don't hit that goal, can those AMIs change? Are we gonna lose some of those lower AMIs?
Not with the agreement. When we do these agreements, we are very specific. What they're proposing is what the fee waivers are based on, and they have to hit those AMIs or come back and ask for something different.
Okay, so they would have to come back to adjust
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Counselor Weimer.
Would these units count toward, was it Colorado 1, 2, 3?
Yes.
Okay,
And it would almost completely take care of our obligation that we
Right.
committed to on Prop 123.
I believe it would completely.
Yeah.
so it's like 3% a year.
Everything.
And then my second, so we did the parkland dedication review. Steve, could you quickly go through school, fire and public as far as what those how those funds benefit the city of Glenwood Springs?
So, I mean, every time we add a unit, we add just kind of more work for our police department, and our fire department and administration. So it's very hard to quantify. It certainly isn't a problem when we do it here and there. It's a problem if it becomes something that happens all the time. Whether we collect these fees or not, it's not, to Counselor Schachter's point, it's not going to cover the entire cost of that we're going to incur over the life of the project.
And then school.
School land I'm less familiar with because we don't get quite as much. You may know more.
Yeah, I was gonna say school land is something that you guys adopt, but those funds would go directly to the school district. They're not something we use internally. We just hand them over. It's always tough when you're trying to pick which funds to not fund or not. I would observe you guys just made a huge commitment in reserves to mental health in the schools. So there's that.
Okay. Counselor Schachter.
Oh,
It's okay.
bad habits, old habits. Another point of clarification, because this is going to come at us in a different form through a different process. Does granting fee waivers create any implication or legal obligation that we are going to support the project?
Not through the planning process whatsoever. I mean, this is really about, do you support it for this CHAP application? Obviously, we want to see a great project, but the city has a variety of rules and regulations that govern it. And honestly, that's specifically why you see no site plans and no proposed architecturals in draft form, is because I wanted to make sure that we segmented and separated those two processes, because you have full authority through the planning process to deny the application.
So all we're really doing tonight is facilitating the application for the LIHTC funding, and the rest will be seen later through the planning process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we are done with staff questions. So at this point, do we want to have the applicant come up? Thank you. If you can just tell us your name and what town you reside in.
Okay, hi, good evening. Thank you. My name is Lisa Sorensen. I'm with Cones Redevelopment Group and I reside in Littleton, Colorado. So, I just want to start and say thank you. Those are all amazing questions and thank you for, laying some groundwork on this tonight. I work for a company, Cones Redevelopment Group, and I have worked in this industry since most all of my career, since the late 90s. And I just wanted to thank you for just even having this avenue available to us to make this request tonight. I know we all know the need for affordable housing, and Watkins did a great presentation in the packet for you tonight. But I would just like to bring out a few things that might address some of the questions, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. This housing will be restricted for 40 years. It will be deed restricted. Just some of the questions about the AMIs. We cannot, once we get an award from CHAFA, that will be restricted in a land use restriction agreement. I would estimate over the 40 years, this 131 units could serve over 5,000 households. Currently, there are 237 tax credit projects in the area. 62 of these units were built in 2019. 60 were built from 2010 to 2014. And all the other units were built in 1990 to 1999. Even given the age of these units, the vacancy rate is 0% with long waiting lists. So we do all know the need of the housing. Glenwood Gardens we would provide units at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% AMI. So 58% of the project would be at 60% and less AMI. Then about 42% would be at 80% AMI, which is still a very high demand in the area. It would provide a new modern living. It would increase the inventory of affordable housing. It would make a very meaningful impact in what's available to folks today. On the average, collectively, this building could save residents $160,000 a month. If we rented this out as a market rate project, we would have monthly rental gross revenue of about $339,000 a month. We will have affordable collect of about $180,000 a month. This is a stated as how it would affect the resident. It would save them about $1,100 a month or over $13,000 a year. So it is very meaningful. In fact, it already was mentioned, the Prop 123 that would help contribute to those requirements. So in addition to providing savings in rent, a building structure, this housing will also provide a cornerstone, a place for people to be proud of where they live, a place for people to thrive, and really just to give folks a break. So as Watkins presented, we are making a meaningful fee waiver request. I want you to know I am not taking this request lightly. I know that this is very real money to this city to pay for staffing, processes, and even the services it'll take to process our building. So let me explain to you what I have done to show what all the other people I have asked to make this project work. So we all know about high construction costs and the interest rate environment. Another thing that has really hit the tax credit finance world is the tax credit rate. So basically we get awarded these tax credits and we go out to the private markets and we sell them, and they're traded like pork bellies kind of. So we closed a project back in June of 2022. What we got equity for those tax credits was around 95 cents credit. So that has also dropped along with things in the economy. So the rate now is about 85 cents a credit. We got quoted from our partner about 88.5, and that's pretty darn good today. So that's what I'm trying to say is we have pushed the limits as far as we can. So we've pushed our equity partners, we've pushed our debt partners, and we've just really leaned on our relationships to make this work. Other things we've done is we are building 100% electric green building. So there's a new provision under the tax code. I can get into, we could be here for hours. 45L, we're looking for energy tax credits, solar tax credits. Another thing, Division of Housing is a group we work with where we get a lot of our financing. I have gone and asked them for the maximum amount of funding that I can from 2 different sources. And so much so, one is called the Transformational Housing Loan Fund. that before we submitted the tax credit to Chaffa, I went to them and said, will you, is this real? Will you guys be really willing to take an app from us? Because this is a significant amount of money. And they said they would. But they said, you need to do everything you can to show me should show us that you will have found places to, other alternatives to fund this gap. So just as an example, this week, I made an appointment with Colorado Health Foundation for an appointment December 4th to talk to them further about money. So it's really very important. Another thing I'd like to just clarify, we are a for-profit developer, but we follow the same rules as a nonprofit developer does. So it's kind of a set standard of rules and we all kind of follow the same rules. So I used to work for Denver Housing Authority. We follow the same rules here as we did there. So our part in this too is we have deferred a good portion of our fees. There's internal revenue code. The tax code says these fees have to be paid in 15 years. And to be honest, we have tapped that out as well. So with all of that said, I understand this is a heavy lift. It could be a heavy lift for city. And it's ironic that we're on the night of your budget presentation. But to your question, Councilman Shatner, what does it take? What does it take to win? Because I will tell you, the other thing that's going on here is this is, in my whole career, one of the most competitive tax credit rounds I've seen. Normally, so just to clarify too, we have the federal tax credits, but this round we are also seeking state credits. It's called the Affordable Housing Tax Credit. It's 1.1 million a year for 6 years. So what we're really looking for is an influx of this state money to this community. And all of these 35 applications are vying for this state money. So there's an app in Eagle. There's one in, so the mountain competition that we have is Eagle, Montrose. There used to be one in Winter Park and Fraser, those dropped out, and another one outside of Steamboat. Then in addition to that, we have the whole Front Range, Colorado Springs, Pueblo. So everyone is vying for these dollars. And so what it takes to do, so what I would like to respectfully request from the council is consideration as much as we could approve tonight. I had an idea though to try to mitigate, because I know it's a big dollar amount. Is there any way we could spread this request over 3 years? So for instance, if we get awarded, we would start construction next year, and I don't know your fiscal year offhand, but 2024, say we'd be under construction in 2025, and then we would finish in 2026. So if that could help mitigate anything, or if we could allocate it in different increments, I'm really just looking to you tonight for some guidance as well. I feel that I'm not saying this to like put pressure or coercion or I'm really just trying to be transparent and let you know the situation. And I cannot promise that upon this approval, we will get approved by Chaffa. But what I can promise you is I personally have done my best to put the very best application forward, and to the very best being able to bring the critical nature of this situation to your attention. I am doing everything I can to bring this funding to this community. So I am just hoping we can solve it together.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back to council and we'll just do a few questions. Counselor Schachter.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. A question, and take it as neutral, nevertheless, for those of us that haven't dealt with Chaffa a lot, the benefits to the community, low income community are clear. You mentioned the rent differential, but help as simply as you can, help us and perhaps our constituents understand what the advantage is to the developer investors for tax credit housing. Obviously, there is one, you're for profit. How do those tax credits transfer? What's the upside to the developer?
Well, it's really, really the period of time that it is, that the tax credit investor invests in this property, they own 99% of it, to be honest. That it has to go, the tax credit investor has to also take the losses. So they not only, so the investors get the tax credits, and the losses. And then to be honest, there's banks. So US Bank, Key Bank, Bank of America, they have this Community Reinvestment Act requirements. So that's why banks are highly motivated to invest in these, because the federal government has, if a bank has a teller, a person station in a community, they have to fulfill these CRA requirements. So those are the three benefits to the investors.
So the investors, though, can use those operating losses and tax credits to offset significant profits in other developments or other aspects of their
Yes.
business.
So the best way,
So-
so this is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, that's all right.
It's a Reagan, it was administered under in a Reagan era program. And basically what it is a public subsidy implemented by the private markets.
Thank you.
Counselor Kell.
Just in your opinion, having worked on these projects and gotten these projects, some approved and maybe some don't get the funding, how important are the fee waivers from the local community?
So
And the
they are important. Basically, every little piece, we kind of need so the comment made, we're competing against these other applicants, and really,
Right.
you guys, the city speaking, the city standing up and saying, we are willing to do this, speaks volumes beyond anything I could say, anything a consultant could say, anything, any investment terms I can get. That's what they want. That's what they want to hear is, and I will say it did come up. I have met with the county. I have met with Cheryl Strauss. She is, the county would be the source of the vouchers. And we have another item we need for the financing is these things called private activity bonds.
Right.
Which have almost become as scarce as the tax credits. And so the county has agreed to allocate the last two, I think, next year and the next year, I think. We have to go to one more committee meeting to get that second year approval, but to also designate their county private activity bond for us as well. So we really have tried to reach the community on different levels.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to council for a motion or discussion. Counselor Godus.
Also a comment and then I'll make a motion, but I was prepared. I saw that number. It's a pretty big difference between the 1.149 and the minimum staff is suggesting of 392. And I always have Steve's back. So usually I'm gravitating towards that lower number. But I gotta say, community match and what I do for my day job, that is what makes successful grants. I sat and testified in front of CHAFA for the project that's now, the free market project that's now behind Discount Tire. It became free market because it didn't end up getting CHAFA qualified. And man, that stinks. Every time I drive by on Midland and see that and go, God, what could have been? So, and that, I think that was like 40 units. This is 131. So I think whatever we do, whatever we end up tonight, needs to be significant. So with that, I will, and the ability, Mitchell, I think your question was great about Prop 123. This sets us up. I mean, this sets us up for the next decade. The opt-in, opt-out, we're done, right? Like this is what we can do to ensure our community's future with opportunity for Prop 123 as well as other items. So with that, I will make a motion to waive. You ready, Ryan? 70K of the building permit fees, 45,000 of the building permit plan review fees, 260,000 parkland dedication fees in lieu. No school land dedication fees should be waived. 144,000 for fire impact fees and 5,000 of public art fee in lieu for a total of 524,000 in total fee waivers.
Counselor
I would be willing to second that if you would consider a friendly amendment.
I am open for business.
A friendly amendment. And the only thing I was thinking of is that just with our current wildfire, worries about that within the community. I was going to suggest that we do not waive the fire impact fee. And I would propose making that money up and waiving the building permit fee and the building permit plan review fee, just because those, that's more staff time that's funded in the budget.
I would accept that amendment. Ryan, are you clear on that?
Is that?
Okay. Well, it's complex. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of things. So I'm not,
Take that, don't waive the fire impact fee.
I-
and yeah.
100% will accept that.
Okay, that would be my only change. And
Okay.
then I will second that motion.
Okay.
Um,
So Ryan, what does that bring the total to? It's close.
528,321.
okay. Any comments from council before
Plus or minus.
we vote? Can you put your speaker on really quickly? Okay. Hold on 1 second. There you go.
I guess I'd love to hear a conversation on council going more, but I do like the idea of spreading it over the 3 years, if that works for the developer. I think we still get the impact of the amount, but is that, no, Carl?
I should make Steve answer this, but I think some of those fees we're gonna take the hit when the building permit comes in.
Okay,
That's when we would get that. So it's a little hard to just like chop it into thirds because
Yeah.
we're going to see it at particular times based on the
okay,
development.
but yeah. So it depends on, that allocation is when that comes in. Okay, I'm fine with that.
Counselor Schachter.
I just have to say, again, we're not endorsing the project at this point. That'll be another discussion, but I would take the more conservative approach because we are not in a position, general fund wise going forward, that we can afford too much leeway. And even in support of this project, it would put a pretty high demand on our general fund going forward. So I'm willing to support the staff recommendation, but not the motion. Thank you.
Counselor Weimer.
Thank you, Counselor Kelp, for your amendment, because I think that's where my head was at, just around saving that fire impact fee. I think that's super important. And I was just thinking, 300 units, 330? How many units? is that?
140, yeah, 131.
131 units, call it 500 people, right? Ish. How many people? 200 people living in that unit, in that building?
Studios.
Yeah. So I was just, I think I support where we at currently with the fees. And I just kind of want to make a comment, thinking about earlier this week when we sat over there at lunch and we talked about kind of the that it's not just a housing issue, unfortunately, that Glenwood suffered from, right? The housing issue is very much sort of a standalone issue in a lot of communities. We don't have that luxury. And so I just think about the number of people now adding to the streets and adding to, the already burdened infrastructure and we're not talking about the project as a project. I just want us to sort of try to remain cognizant that it's not just about adding housing for Glenwood, right? It's adding, it's asking more from our existing resources and thinking through, I guess, in this discussion, how do these fees, if at all, how do these fees go to support some of that infrastructure, right? And is that a trade-off, right? That we're sort of okay making, but it's kind of a bit of a right field comment, but I just wanted to kind of make sure that we're all staying sort of in mind with that. And I think I support where we are currently with the waiving levels.
Counselor Gotis.
And the reason I kind of got to my number is I want you to be able to say, I wasn't quite good with $1 million. But I did want you to be able to say in your talking points, we have over $500,000. I think that talking point is important. If you're able to, if not, I'll just like spitball, but how much will this total project cost?
It's a lot. Our total development cost is about, let's see, it's about 430,000 a unit. So just our construction cost is 335,000 unit, that doesn't include land or any of our interest expense or anything, so.
So help me with the math on that.
Yeah.
So.
50 million?
Yep. Yep. Yep, it's a little over 40 million.
40 million. Okay. So I guess that goes to my question, maybe comment. I'm not an attorney and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but when I read the 2C language, it says increase the supply of workforce housing for Glenwood Springs residents and employees of Glenwood Springs businesses, including but not limited to purchasing real property, addressing infrastructure and redevelopment existing housing. This project absolutely increases the supply of workforce houses for Glenwood Springs residents and employees. If you talk about $5 million $500,000 as a percentage of 40 million, you're talking about 1.2% of the total project. So do we think out of those 131 units, there will be 2 units? I mean, so I think now this is not a federal thing, right? This is, I think, something that we would have to dig into as a council and say, hey, it says here, this will increase the supply of workforce housing. There will certainly be more than 1 or 2 units for workforce housing. So I don't want this thing to die on the hill of a discussion of 2C money or not, but I do think it is appropriate. I don't think that the language in our ballot language was so specific to exclude any project that doesn't have a complete deed restriction on it. But
What I was going to say, and that's something that we talked a lot about that internally. And council is going to have to kind of work through, and the 2C group is going to have to work through what they think about that. Obviously the conservative approach is because it can't be restricted to Glenwood workforce. Maybe it's not the right place. I think that you guys will, I can almost guarantee you may see a request for additional support to close a gap that just knowing how projects are going right now. And so Steve in his wisdom talked a little bit internally about, do we reserve that for later to see if that's something that we need to try to bring to bear to close the gap on the project if it really turns out to be something.
This project.
Yeah, that we want to invest in. I think that is a real struggle. I think it's going to be a real struggle and something for you and the 2C to talk about how we address that workforce deed restriction piece when we're partnering with other entities that may have other requirements like this.
so I think what I'm feeling and kind of what I'm hearing, this is not a locked in stone legal opinion that we have no ability to do it. But I think there's some flexibility to have future conversations. For that, I'm really good. I would just say as another comment, and if people want to talk me up on the number, I'm feeling generous because where else are we going to be able to spend $500,000 and get 131 units of not big A affordable, but like capital blaring billboard A affordable, 30 to 50%. This is, 131 units is a huge amount for such a small investment. So I'm almost going to vote against my own motion because it's not generous enough. I'll stick with it, but I just encourage everybody to think of the investment that what we will get out of this relatively minor investment. Thank you.
Counselor Day.
Thank you. Oh, no, I did it too. Summer, it's contagious.
Come on, you two. Let's see.
No
Where are
pets.
you?
Mine is old
Okay.
pets. So, I sit on my hands too. Okay, motion at hand. Thank you for changing it to the building permit fee and the plan review fee. I feel like it can be absorbed better when it's internally instead of, I feel the other ones were taking money from the public and I don't think that's right. So that shift was good. I'm a little bummed about the $5,000 out of the arts because arts always gives.
Ask me to make a friendly amendment.
I think if we all give, let's give there too, because again, it's public art. Let me think about it. I just feel a little, art's always in the bottom. So, so the motion as it stands, I can live with, like Councillor Weimer said in my head, I got it. But what I don't have in my head, and I need you guys' help. We're spending $500,000 on people that may not necessarily work in Glenwood.
Totally, that's my point too.
And I struggle with that. And I'm not saying it's gonna die because of this, but is there any way we can tie this closer to our community or explain to me why it's still a good thing that we're increasing traffic, we're increasing resource, we're using up more resources. We're giving parkland school fees that we could use in town for people that, and this sounds terrible, don't even work within our town limits. So I struggle a little bit with that.
So
Hold on one second. I think what I heard was a true question. And so I'd like counsel or our legal counsel
Yeah.
to jump in and or the developer, like, can we make some limitations? So this is absolutely City of Glenwood employees.
No,
There's no way around.
no, I mean, not with federal and statewide funding. The restrictions on Fair Housing Act are going to control on that.
Oh,
What I
okay.
will say though is at those AMIs, there are any number of, I mean, and part of the reason why we put in the information about the types of workers is that those are mostly folks that probably, if you talk to your server tonight later at a bar, they probably don't live in Glenwood. And that's the people that are getting hit with, that's who falls into these AMIs. So to Counselor Godis's point, I think the odds are pretty good. We're going to see some people who work in Glenwood living there. We might see some people who are retired, who can't live that can make that work, but they can't otherwise stay in town. I guess what I would suggest is it may be that in this context, you might think about the project as one that benefits the community in a different way than just workforce housing. I think it maybe brings something different to the table, and that's why we have the 2C money on that, really focused on that one thing, because I don't know that it's going to do both.
Okay, well, thank you for
No.
the clarification. I'm still want to hear from you guys, why this is still a good thing. Thank you,
Okay.
Carl, always good, but I want to hear it from my peers here.
Okay.
Why are we not, or why are we doing this?
Counselor Zelinski.
Thank you.
So I was struggling with even having this conversation just because I was like really angsting over how do I waive fees when I don't even understand, the particulars of the project. And this conversation has been incredibly helpful. That said, I echo Mitchell's, like I look at, for instance, we should make a real concerted effort to bolster our public transportation, make sure that there's a bus stop right around there, make sure that we have adequate resources for this. I agree that this is addressing a need in our community, and I would hate to see this project not move forward because we don't support it. And so for that reason, I'm in support of the fee waivers. We have our 2C money that can be used for some other, like the deed restricted, the buy downs, the other things that we can do internally to really like bolster our community. This serves a segment that this kind of takes a weight off our back so that we can focus on that. And I think that that's an intrinsic benefit to answer your question. But it puts a pretty big strain on our community. So I would encourage us to really be thinking ahead before this, some of these other like approvals come before us, how we can align this project and the need that it will serve with the values of our community and what we've been asked for of our community. And I think that tonight approving these to get the ball moving forward is very appropriate. But I think that we need to do some homework and make sure that we are addressing some of the deeper issues that are just personal to our community.
And I'm going to jump in. I think everyone's had one chance to talk. So I'm going to jump in and then I'll go back around to everyone else again. And I will say that I appreciate the intrinsic nature of this. The AMIs are incredibly generous. They definitely serve a certain demographic that is underserved. And yet I can't get past the idea of not having it be restricted to Glenwood. I feel like in the last 3 years that I've been on council, I have seen so many different applications come through. And so I don't think that we are in the time where we have scarcity and where we are like, oh man, we need projects. Projects are coming to us. And we now have 2C money. And I feel as though we can be a little more selective. So when I step back and say, is there a guarantee that these people will live and work in Glenwood? And there's not. I can't get behind it, because would Aspen give fee waivers with the potential that it's not going to be their employees living in the houses. They wouldn't. And so here we have this desirable town. We have limited land to be developed. We have worked so hard to identify the needs within the community, and housing for our employees is one of the biggest priorities we have. And yet we are saying we'll reduce all of these things. We'll take a kind of a burden to our all these different categories that we need this money. This is how we operate. We know what the budget looks like. And yet we're saying we'll reduce it with no guarantee that it'll benefit the businesses that we rely on and the community members that we're responsible to. So unless that was a guarantee, unfortunately this evening, I won't be supporting this. Counselor Cap.
Okay,
Or
no,
you,
for me.
Counselor Cap.
I'd just like to speak a little bit to some of these concepts, because I've heard comments that, you know, let's think about the type of housing this is bringing to our town, which is right now, what's our medium cost of house to buy a home in Glenwood right now?
900,000 for a single family home.
Thank you very much, my realtor friend.
Mayor Real Estate.
So keeping that in mind, think of who this might be serving and who you are excluding from our community with those types of housing costs, and or with the rents that we see. I think we're over $2,000 for a studio, or close to 2,000 for a studio at this point, which just takes my breath away, not in a good way. But so when you think about who this is serving, these people, I mean, you say you want guarantees that they work here. Well, there's no guarantee that they won't work here. I mean, maybe a few of them might work up Valley, but even our own housing guidelines, it's a requirement that you work in Glenwood to get in, but it's not a requirement that you work in Glenwood for the rest of your life. I mean, it's my understanding is it. So it's, you know, we're not here to control people's lives. But most of these people that I see a project like this serving, they're already in our community. They're not creating new traffic. In fact, if anything, by allowing people who are already commuting in from Rifle or Parachute to work in our community in restaurants or at the hot springs or at different locations, by letting them live here in a project like this on the service worker salaries or hourly wages that they're making, we're reducing traffic. If anything, we're reducing the impacts on our community in that respect. So I think about the projects that are in our community right now that have been LIHTC. We have the Manors, which, you know, those are old projects, but I think of the people who live there, that serves a segment of our community that otherwise would be pushed out and could not live there. And those are buildings that have been there for a long time, late 70s, and it serves a portion of our community, which frankly, I really like having here. It's older people who could not afford to be here. You look at the Match Buff over by the school, you look at Glenwood Greens. There are workers living in there that are serving and working in our community and not having to commute in. So I really think we have to think hard about impacts. And if a few of them might be commuting to other communities to work, that's happening all up and down the valley. So are we going to look a gift horse in the mouth and turn down this money? Let's say, okay, we don't get the LIHTC funding. What do we have? Like Jonathan brought up, that project, if it's developed at market rate, we're going to have more $3,000 a month or $3,600 or $2,000 for a studio. I mean, is that what we want? I don't care if we get 10% affordable unit. That's a drop in the bucket between what a project like this could bring to our town for meeting the Prop 123 requirements and reducing impacts of people having to come in and work. So I fully support this. I would support more fee waivers for the project, but I really think just think about what's being set up here tonight and how we support this community going forward.
Counselor Schachter.
Thank you, and out of respect to everybody up here, there's a lot been said, but I think we're overdoing this to a degree, because to me, it's fairly simple tonight, even though I don't support the motion. We are saying, do we want to lend support to move this forward so we can have this discussion later? Not now. It's going to come through the planning process, the density, the RO, all that stuff is going to come through us through public process and P and Z. And that's when I think a lot of this discussion should be occurring. Tonight, to me, it's relatively simple. Do we support helping the application or not? And some of this is related, but it's the depth of this will happen in the future. So that's why I'd like to move the motion, call the motion as soon as
Yep.
possible.
Well, we're gonna do one more whip because I've got a lot of lights still, or a couple lights still lit up. Counselor Gotis.
I think, Marco, to your question, it's a great question. It's a question that I brought up vigorously when we talked about the 8th and Midland.
You did.
The question about workforce. I'm sorry, why, you're having anxiety. I heard it from you as well, Mayor Wusso. This isn't guaranteed to serve our community. Well, you both were very supportive of that project, which there was no guarantee that any of those residents would support the businesses in Glenwood Springs. So I guess my question would be, what is the difference? And one of the differences, it was $1 million worth of land and hundreds of $1,000s of impact fees as well. So we gave more than twice of what my motion is to a project that could not guarantee that it was going to support Glenwood Springs as well. So I guess I'm not seeing any difference in this other than it costs the taxpayers half as much. So I think also, if you look at this project, the 131 units, we import 80% of our workforce into Glenwood Springs. I'm all about Aspen building for Aspen and their employees. But when 80% of the people come into our community, I think it'd be very generous to say that you could just assume that just half, 65 of these units will be staffed by people who work in Glenwood Springs. Now, I could be wrong. It might be 40%, it might be 60, but I don't think people of good faith can have too much of an argument that 500,000 to get 65-ish units for Glenwood Springs workers that to support our business community would not be a great investment in that. And I think that the topping on this, more to your point, Marco, when you look at the AMI, the reason I think it'd be much more than 65 units and much more than half of the units is these AMI levels. 66 units are at 50% AMI, which is $20 an hour. I'm sorry, it's $18 an hour. So 66 of these units by their deed restriction, if you work at Wendy's, off the street, starting salary at Wendy's on their billboard, $18 an hour, $18.50 an hour. If you work at Wendy's, you make too much money to qualify for half of these units. So I think the actually, to your point, is that I would almost worry that the people who would live in these units wouldn't be able to qualify, would be working down valley, would live in Glenwood and maybe commute down valley. I don't think that'll actually happen. So I think because of the AMI restrictions, I think because we import 80% of our workforce and because just math of the numbers, I think that we can feel pretty safe in assuming that a $500,000 investment will certainly have leverage massively affordable housing for our workforce, for our business community, somewhere between 40 to 80 units. And we can argue in between those numbers all day long. So thanks. That's all I want to say.
Counselor Dane.
Thank you. I got it. I'm not gonna tell you what I think. I know what the difference is between the Midland project and this one. I think there's a huge difference, but we can discuss that later. Exactly. To Councillor Schachter's point, yeah, let's move this forward. I got one quick change. I made up my mind. I would like to have the $5,000 back into the arts. And I'm looking for amendments for the first and the second. So
Yeah. Okay.
fantastic.
Okay.
Could we,
Yeah. Shelley, Counselor Kaup is on and
Right.
Counselor Dane was on.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
not done.
You're not on yet, just a second. Okay, then have you guys done everything you need to do?
Yes, he could,
Okay.
he just couldn't hear.
I know. I just need to know who to turn off the mics. Okay. Counselor Gotis, you're on.
I just wanted to clarify what we were doing. We are not, we are waiting or we're not waiting?
We're not waiving the $5,000, so it goes from 528 down to 523 something. Thank you.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
what I'm asking.
Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and call the
Wait,
question.
I'm not-
Oh, wait.
I wasn't quite done.
Okay, wait, oh,
It's
then,
okay. It's, you
here.
know what, it's not,
do you want to be?
yeah, maybe I'll say,
Okay, do it. Yeah.
maybe I'll say,
Go ahead.
just because maybe I should. Yes, to your point, 100% hear you. I really, really
Yeah.
hear you. These should be, Glenwood Springs city limit workers, 100%. But I also hear your point, and I also hear your point. And who actually helped me made up my mind was you, because you said, let's move this forward, and we still have our 2C money. And with that 2C money, we can do something else that really is benefiting Glenwood Springs. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Counselor Co.
I was amending my second.
Okay.
And I appreciate all the comments up here. It's a good discussion.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yep.
say, thank you all so much. I think that ultimately had it just had that one element, I would probably be like, let's push higher.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling right now that I need to really go this direction. So thank you all for being so invested and also so well versed in this. This is, I know you don't take these decisions lightly. Let's call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski, no, Mayor Wusso, yes, Counselor Gotis, yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dame, yes, Counselor Weimer, yes, Counselor Kaup, no, Counselor Schachter. It passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for presenting that to us. Okay.
Very gracious.
Okay. And we're gonna move on to item number 14, which is the cul-de-sac discussion. We did have a work session earlier today. And this is now, we're jumping back into this topic. Mhm.
Hello, Council. Ryan Gordon. I am the city engineer. So as Mayor Wusso stated, we had a work session earlier today. We also had a work session several months ago regarding cul-de-sacs. And a real quick summary, many of the cul-de-sacs in Glenwood do not had to signposts regarding parking in the cul-de-sac. So the work session several months ago was to address that concern. The work session 2 months ago was to discuss and put up signs in those cul-de-sacs that had specific language in their PUD or SIA agreements regarding parking in those cul-de-sacs. So those cul-de-sacs that specifically had verbiage in the documents that said no parking in the cul-de-sacs, we noticed the public several months ago and then put up no parking signs in those cul-de-sacs. There is approximately 8 cul-de-sacs in Glenwood Springs currently right now that there are no provisions or language within the existing SAAs or PUDs that describe the parking requirements in the cul-de-sacs. And so that's what we're here to address. In August, the fire department and engineering took one of their engines, their medium-sized engines, and went and drove the cul-de-sacs in question. The purpose was to see the ability of the engine to quickly and safely and efficiently navigate those cul-de-sacs to make a turnaround through the cul-de-sac. Additionally, beyond the fire engines, there's a need for efficiently to be able to plow those cul-de-sacs, and vehicles within those cul-de-sacs do hinder that movement. During that event that we went and traveled those cul-de-sacs, we took the drone that the fire department has and shot aerial footage to observe that movement and to see if there were obstructions or not. And I have a few of those videos right now that I will present to kind of demonstrate some of those tight cul-de-sacs. Give me 1 second here. All right, hold on. Share my screen. No. All right, 1 second. Ah, here we go. Why isn't that working? There we go. All right. This is one of the cul-de-sacs out in Glenwood Park. Just for reference, most of the cul-de-sacs in question are in Glenwood Park, one in the Cypress Avenue, kind of in Glenwood proper, and then a few in West Glenwood. And so while you can see that the fire truck is able to make the turn, it does have to take it very cautiously, which again reduces the response time. Additionally, talking to Chief Tillotson, one of the challenges as well is when the fire truck enters a cul-de-sac, it always makes the same turning movement to align where the pumping apparatus on the truck is located. Additionally, the first thing they do is they drive to the fire hydrant. So they can't make the turn the opposite direction or pull straight in if the fire hydrant is on the opposite side. So it does restrict and perhaps could reduce the effectiveness and the ability of the firefighters to access the cul-de-sac quickly. Then certainly it helps to facilitate response time and then for other vehicles to enter and exit the cul-de-sac. So staff's recommendation is that in these cul-de-sacs that we do not have specific language in the PUDs and SIAs, that we do erect no parking signs for firefighting reasons. Opening up for comments, questions. I can also share some other videos if you'd like of additional cul-de-sacs throughout town.
There's a decision. I'm gonna bring it back to council. Any questions from council? Councilor Dunn.
Thank you. I asked this earlier and I want to make sure it's on the record. Are we adding fire lane to our no parking signs?
Yes, we will.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Gotis.
And this applies just to the bulbous area of the cul-de-sac. It does not apply to the street feeding.
Correct. I'm not exactly sure that terminology, the neck of it, but this is the area.
I don't think bulbous is
of
right
the
either.
Cul-de-sac itself, where we need that full turnaround movement of the emergency vehicles.
And my other question is, it's kind of a specific question, but in, I think Mountain Drive at the end, there's a old cul-de-sac, and then the Park East development happened. So there's like a double cul-de-sac. Would the first, I'll call it the Dave Merritt cul-de-sac for the folks that know.
Totally.
Would that cul-de-sac be subject to these restrictions, or just the second cul-de-sac with the island in the middle, if you're familiar with that area?
Sure. Well, so the Park East cul-de-sac at the end of Park East and the Sky Ranch Drive is currently.
No,
it's
it's
not.
Mountain Drive. It's Glenwood Park, but like when Park East was developed, it was an add-on to Park East. So it is like 1511 specifically, Mountain Drive. That cul-de-sac has an island with some cheatgrass in the middle. If you want to bring up a Google map, it's pretty clear.
The old cul-de-sac, this is part of Park East, and no, this would not be restricted here because of.
Oh, yeah, right. So yeah, the first bulbous cul-de-sac is Matt Langhorst pointed out the map that would not have the restriction, but the one with the vegetation is.
So we're counting that bulbous as a neck.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bulbous neck.
I like this made up terminology. Councilor Weimer.
Thank you, Ryan. With this set of recommendations, is it fair to say that we are treating every cul-de-sac in town equally? Or are we, this sort of cul-de-sac gets treated this way, that sort of cul-de-sac gets treated that way? Or can you talk a little bit about that philosophy?
Yeah. So that's an accurate statement. So the cul-de-sacs in question were built with a radius or a diameter, the size of the cul-de-sac that it does not accommodate vehicles, the fire engines to turn with vehicles parking on the street. That's governed by the International Fire Code. And if a development was happening today and those developments wanted street side parking or parking on the cul-de-sacs, the cul-de-sacs would be sized appropriately. All the cul-de-sacs in question do not have that size requirement. So all these cul-de-sacs are treated equally after this.
Any other questions? I have a quick question. The enforcement of this, do you know what the fine is for parking in it in the event that they got a ticket?
Parking tickets?
Parking ticket.
It'd just be a parking ticket?
Yeah, somewhere $30 to $40 for a violation.
Okay. Okay,
And there is an enforcement element that would have to happen.
there's an enforcement that would need to happen.
That's correct, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Let's see. I think I'll open it to public and see if we have any public comments or questions. Anybody either here or online that would like 3 minutes to visit about these concerns? Can you turn off that guy? Thank you. So we do have a few members online. It looks like Donna Yost, who was here earlier, and go ahead, Donna. We'll give you 3 minutes. Will you start the timer, please? Donna was here earlier for our work session, but there was a concern that we didn't give her 3 minutes, so we're going to give her 3 full minutes now.
I didn't realize I would be able to talk on here tonight. First of all, the International Fire Code is a recommendation. And you have decided to take the most severe part of it. I just got off the phone with my father, 70 years as a volunteer fireman, fire chief, ran the fire department until 3 years ago. And he thinks this is crazy. Why a fire truck would rush down into my cul-de-sac, which you just had on the screen there, and need to turn around and leave. He said the part about the controls is also a bunch of BS. And there is no fire hydrant in our cul-de-sac. It's at the end of the street at Mountain Drive. So that doesn't make sense either. Glenwood Park was not developed or was developed before making any of these requirements. We've always parked. I've lived here for over 30 years. There's never been an issue. I actually think nose in was a good way of parking because it created more parking. If anything, for the small amount of additional safety you think you're getting for us, we are going to have on a daily basis more stress and angst of where we're going to park, who's taking our parking, etc. Again, my father, who was recommended by the New York State Assembly for his service, says this is ridiculous to be doing this. I looked at other places around here. In Grand Junction, a length of 0 to 300 feet, no turnaround is required. And, just use somebody to spot you to back up for the possibility that it's needed. I have a feeling I could live here another 20 years and never see an incident. I'd love to hear from the fire chief how many times in the city of Glenwood Springs in the last 40 years, not having these restrictions has been a huge problem in a loss of life or property. Please don't do this.
Hey, thank you, Donna. I'm glad you were able to make it to this evening's meeting, and thank you for sharing your concerns and your frustrations with us. Anyone else from the public online that would like to take 3 minutes to tell us any concerns? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment section, and I'm going to bring it back to council. And I guess at this point, I'm looking for a motion. Oh,
Sorry. Madam
Yeah, that's
Mayor,
okay.
may I
Counselor
ask an
Deb.
additional question
Absolutely.
to staff quick? Ryan, please. So we saw the video, we saw the cul-de-sac, we saw the driveways, and we saw the cars parked in the street. Is it, Councillor Cow brought it up earlier in our discussion, is it not required that when we construct houses that you provide 2 off-street spaces? Or a garage or something where you can at least park 2 cars, or 1.5 now, is that where we are?
Yeah, I can't speak to the number of parking spots, but certainly, the construction of houses with garages and driveways is intended to park vehicles within them.
So I guess my question is, and this can go into the round too, what makes it so bad in those cul-de-sacs that the actual turnaround is full of cars while the driveways are empty, or the driveways full too, and there's just more occupancy than these houses should hold? I'm just throwing it out there because I don't know. And it's driving me a bit nuts, to be honest with you, because I'm seeing the empty driveways and the guy in his 2-car garage is in the center. Well, we require off-street parking, and these houses have off-street parking, correct? They all do, from what you saw.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Couch.
I just wondered, Ryan, if some of the, just to speak to some of the issues that Mrs. Yost brought up, just as far as why does the city need to do this? Why now? And if you could just reiterate a little bit of that for the public, if it pertains to CIRSA or some of the things that were brought up in the work session, evacuation, those types of things, and being able to respond to fires that are, potentially, and as we've seen over the course of the last 10 years, are becoming more frequent.
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing that's happened is there's been lack enforcement and lack of signage in the cul-de-sacs that have that language in the SIAs and the PUDs that has not been up. So we've been somewhat conditioned that parking in the cul-de-sacs is a non-issue. And as we're starting to unravel that and starting to enforce that, we've recognized that there is a gap and that we need to have that signs up, particularly when it's been clearly written in and demonstrated within those documents. And again, as we sort of started to look at those cul-de-sacs that had that language, we recognized that there were several that did not. And therefore, that's why we went on this exercise to determine that. And it really is in access. In the videos that we've seen, there really aren't that many vehicles in these cul-de-sacs. But if you could imagine many more in these cul-de-sacs, it becomes much more difficult to access and get in, and then to turn around and to do the correct travel movement. So that's really the condition is wanting to make sure we're able to efficiently to get in and get out, and then also to get other vehicles in, and be able to provide that response time.
Okay.
Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but the driveway question, I think that's really, I think part of it is just a privilege that a lot of folks have, where my garage right now, half of it is a raft, I need to put it up soon. Half of it is bikes, because those are my toys that I have. I don't have a storage shed in the backyard. So I think it's, I've walked these cul-de-sacs a lot in both my campaigns. I know them really familiar. I've walked it's my neighborhood. It's our neighborhood. And, I think that I see a lot of 2-car garages, and 2-car garages have a 2-car driveway. I think in defense of Mr. Casey, who spoke a little bit earlier today, he has a vacation rental in his basement, and a rental, like a room, I think, that he ADUs out. So it is tough if you park both your cars in the garage to then ask your Airbnb guest to park down the street. So I get that in his thing. I think when we have taken ADUs and Glenwood Park used to be, it is a PUD, but it used to not have the availability to do ADUs. It now does for the last 5 years. So more and more people are putting in ADUs. So it is tough if you do the right thing and park 2 cars in the garage and you don't have all these toys and this privileged existence that a lot of us do have. That it is tough then to get out from behind that third person. If you have a child that is of driving age. So I get it. And I think those are some of the reasons maybe, Marco, that you see an empty driveway, but a car in the street. But to that point, even the houses that have a 1-car garage and a 1-car driveway probably can add, even if it's just crushed stones, an extra 5 feet of width and park 2 cars in a driveway and not utilize the 1-car garage. So I think there are options and opportunities. And yes, for the one house I'm thinking of has a garage full of whatever, has a driveway full of raft supplies, and then parks 3 cars face in. That person's going to have a dramatic change, because even if we just signed it for parallel parking, like it's not going to, like that video we saw, the original video we saw, we had 2 cars that were nose in, which that's not good. That's not the deal anywhere, right? So I think if we don't, at a minimum, if we don't do what is the staff report suggested, I think at minimum, we'd have to at least sign it for and enforce the 5 feet away from driveways, the parallel parking only. At a minimum. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm going to jump in and just say that I don't want to be glib in making this decision, because ultimately none of these cul-de-sacs do we live on. So this will impact others in our community before it'll impact us. And with regard to the empty driveways, it's a little bit like when your house is clean, it's like, it's clean, it's dirty, it's dirty, it's clean. The parking, the driveways they're full, then your 16-year-old leaves, then you come back with groceries, but then you run to go pick up your 14-year-old. We maybe caught it when there just weren't people parked in the driveways. I don't want to make any of those comments or assumptions or slight the people who live in this community. I will say, though, that we're now aware of this concern. Our fire chief made this recommendation. It has an impact on our insurance. Big picture, if we don't do this and something does occur, that's on us. And I think in this case, we need to keep that in mind as we make decisions. So that is all I have to say. Sir, I can. Counselor Dem.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, point of order. Do we need an actual decision in this tonight, an action moving forward?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we need a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Madam
So-
Mayor, if I may?
Yep.
Okay. In the item 14 cul-de-sac discussion tonight, I will move that we approve staff's recommendation of no parking fire lane signs to be installed in all the cul-de-sacs listed in order to allow safe and effective operations.
Is there a second? Counselor Zelinski.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Gotis. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. Yes, Counselor Schachter. It passes 6-1.
Okay. Counselor Zelinski, your light is on. Did you want? No. Okay. So we are, Counselor Gotis, your light is on. Did you like? Okay, go ahead.
Either now or maybe at the end of the next item agenda. Do you mind if we take like a 5-minute break?
How about right now? We'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back here at 8:30. Yeah. into session. And we are going to, yeah, we're gonna close the door so you guys can hear us without background noise.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for that moment. I am gonna flip flop the next two items. So we're gonna do item 16 before 15 because we have people waiting here to be part of that discussion. So we are gonna start item 16, resolution 2023-31 outdoor dining fee. And then we'll go back to item 15.
Okay, Emery Ellingson, Community Development, presenting resolution 2023-31. So this original resolution came to City Council in August, and it was specifically for prorating the lease rate for outdoor dining in parking spaces. And the resolution has been slightly altered to what you see today, which would be up for possible discussion. It also leaves the rate per square foot open for amending in this resolution. And so again, just kind of going off the work session, this is what's on as far as if you were to vote on something, this is what's being voted on for this resolution now. And then I think just maybe going off the work session, maybe questions that staff has for council is just, continue with the uniform lease rate for all types. If you're going to split it, how so? And then also just, I guess, review of administrative fees. And then that's about all I have.
Thank you. And this, a reminder as well, we did a work session earlier today on this. So there's already been some dialogue and a better understanding of council on what we're looking at. Bring it back to council for any questions and or an action, motion. Oh, yeah, we should do that. We should do that. Yeah, well, no, but questions, usually we do questions first. Yeah.
And when nobody
There's no
said
question,
anything.
then everybody tell me, yeah. So any questions? I will go ahead and close that. And we'll open it up to the public. Anyone who is here specifically for this item, you're welcome to come up. You have 3 minutes at the podium. If you can just state your name and the city in which you reside. Thank you.
My name is Greg Lemka. I'm the owner of Rocky Mountain Pizza Company, and I live in West Glenwood. Thank you for taking my comments. Just a few things I thought I might say in response to some of the comments made during the work session earlier this evening. In general, I have no opposition to an increase in price per square foot for the park that I use. It's wonderful and it's worthy for very, very many reasons. It provides additional tax revenue to the city through the increased sales outdoors. I believe this is the reason why most examples provided in the local area were either free or for a small sum. I have a strong feeling that the outdoor dining program was created not as a moneymaker, but to boost visitation and sales in order to help small business owners. This became even more important, obviously, during and after the pandemic. Outdoor dining also makes for a more enticing atmosphere for the visitors and us locals alike. Many of the outdoor seating areas, regardless of how much their outdoor spaces are used, and I heard some discussion about that, simply are not as affordable as Rocky Mountain Pizza Company. We absorb many of the larger parties during the summer because we can accommodate them outdoors. Should you decide to do with the parking space specific parklet, which affects me, I believe you would over time see visitation drop from specific demographics during the summer months. If folks cannot sit down for a dinner at a place they can afford, no memories will be made in Glenwood, and it might not be on their list of places to spend a long weekend the next time. Our parklet is used weather permitting every day it is open. We have people who sit at the tables even before I've got all 4 of them set up. If you drive or walk by on a summer evening, you will see happy people eating craft-made pizza and making memories. Those are the things that bring visitors back to Glenwood Springs. Councilmember Godis mentioned doing away with the 1 or 2 parking spaces that were parklets because generally speaking, it was not worth it. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing there. We live in a small town. I would think that most of us place great value in that small town atmosphere that we are afforded here in Glenwood Springs. In that case, to me, it would seem antithetical in direct contrast to remove the program because it's not worth it. My kids all went to school here. My wife teaches them to solve for RE1, and I work hard every day to make a living. But I also provide a place where people can elevate their lives, learn important skills for high school, for college, and for upward mobility. If there is any place where it's worth it for only 1 or 2 people, it's right here. To pay for a monthly sum of $300 or $400 or $500, also I believe suggested, maybe thrown out there by Councilman Godus, it's much more than 2 tickets. The net income of a restaurant has decreased. This is due to the rising cost of labor, goods sold, and an inability to raise the prices to keep margins unaffected in parity with the rest of those costs that are consistently rising. And we still see that on a daily basis. At roughly 13% of gross sales, which is what my margins are generally, sometimes it's better, sometimes a little bit worse, we might net $208 from $1,600 in sales on a very good night. That's 4 turns of 4 tables. Those tickets are about $100 plus or minus dollars. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was so engrossed in your. This is great. Thank you. And you're going through. Thank you so much for speaking. That's great. Thank you. Okay, Counselor Godus.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I don't think that it's not worth it to have an outdoor dining program. If that's what my comments meant, I think that the parklet portion of it for 2 businesses to take away 4 parking spots. I think my comment was, I don't think it's worth it for the dollar amount, for any dollar amount. Well, not any, at some point it's worth it. But I don't think that giving up 2 parking spots is worth the parklet program, not outdoor dining, not everything that we have on 7th Street. So I just want to be clear and specify that. Thanks.
Counselor Zelinski.
So, yeah, I just was commenting when we took our little break. You know, I look at Rocky Mountain Pizza and I said exactly what you did. Like, they employ our high school kids. They are one of the more affordable downtown options. It's also a pretty congested corner. And so, you know, it's this like cost benefit analysis, weigh it all out. I think that you've proven your point, but I think that it's good that we're having this conversation. I think that, you know, looking at all of these impacts, you know, it's so easy to just let the status quo continue on what it is. And so I think that, you know, really examine it helps me recognize the contribution that you make, right? I just drive by it all the time and I don't really think about it. Now I'm like thinking about it. And so that's a good thing. You know, there are some neighboring businesses that are impacted not so positively. And so, you know, we have to be cognizant of that as well. But, you know, I do think that probably we could have, you know, reexamination of the fees, but I don't really advocate for getting rid of those parking spaces. I think I think we need to like let it ride and kind of look it over a little bit.
Okay. Counselor Weimer.
Are we ready to make motion?
Let's do this. Let's make sure everybody has an opportunity to talk and then we'll do a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
If he's ready, we could continue the discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to make a motion, we can do
Just
that.
for kind of purposes of discussion. So I'd like to move that we consider our leasing amounts for both square footage of right-of-way off-street usage, as well as on-street parking space usage to the following numbers. For right-of-way usage, we increase the annual lease to $2.50 a square foot, which is roughly a doubling of the current amount.
Which is $1.02.
Yes, so from,
$1.75, so it's not a double.
oh, I was looking at the
Yeah.
wrong one. Okay, so
Okay.
let's say $3 then. We're not, let's say
Okay.
$3
Okay, thank you.
to us for a square foot, and that's for the off-street right away leasage, and that remains that does not remain, that goes to a 9-month, well, it's an annual lease, but it's only in effect for 9 months of the year because of snow removal, and we ask them to remove that. Right, it's kind of really only in use for, oh, no, that's for the on-street stuff, never mind. Okay, so that remains an annual lease. And then for the leasing of parking spaces, I say that we instead think about it as a parking space and not as a square footage basis. And that becomes $100 per month per parking space. And that's a monthly fee, but it's not a month-to-month lease. So if I want, I want this parking spot for 6 months, it's 6 months worth of, it'd be $600 for this spot. And so I don't need to do my alcohol, every month or sort of thing. So it would be it would be on a monthly basis, but not a month-to-month lease. And then finally, the application, the administrative fee be doubled from $75 to $150. That's an annual deal. And that's a number that's been unchanged for 9 years. So I think we probably.
Can I ask a quick clarification, Counselor? On the $3 a square foot, that's annually?
Correct.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
Like the $3 a square foot, we calculated out, and then that's an annual payment.
That's an annual payment.
Okay.
It's the parking spaces that become monthly.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
since we have someone here, let's just do a really quick, like right now, I'm looking at the Rocky Mountain Pizza outdoor seating sidewalk. You've historically paid $130, so that would go up approximately. Yeah, okay, great. And then the parklet temporary easement, how does that one get applied?
That would be 2 spaces,
Two
100 each, be
spaces.
200, be.
What, 2,400 if we did 200, $100 a month?
If it was 12 months.
Okay,
But they don't use it for 12 months, right?
so they use it for 9,
The lease is for 12.
6 months?
That's what I was just gonna add.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay.
So 6 to
Thank you.
7, $1,400 a
Okay.
year.
Is there a second? Okay, Counselor Cap, can you do that with the mic on?
I will second the motion.
Great. So we have a motion by Counselor Weimer, a second by Counselor Cow. Can you just do a really quick summary again so we know exactly?
That wasn't clear the first time? You were.
Sure, but well, as long as everybody's good with it.
So,
Okay, great.
so where I'm at is off-street right away is increased from $1.75
Mhm.
to $3 a square foot.
Okay.
And that is an annual lease.
Okay.
On-street parking space usage gets converted from a square footage basis to a parking space basis. And that lease is $100 per month per space. And that is allowed to be a monthly lease, but not necessarily month-to-month lease. And then finally, the administrative fee is doubled from 75 to 150.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the clarity on that. Sometimes I think it helps everyone.
I do have a question. So would they be paying the $3 a square foot on top of the $100 parking spot?
One or the other, you're either on-street parking space or you're off-street right.
Okay, because I think that would decrease the amount for Rocky Mountain.
Well, no, because they're paying an annual amount.
They're paying an annual amount with the $3 a square foot encompassing everything. If they decrease the $3 amount encompassing the 2 parking spots.
Yeah.
And
It's
just
well,
pay
it's gonna be,
$100.
yeah, it's gonna have to be broken
Yeah.
out for the 2 different things.
Yeah.
So we got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, perfect. Does everybody, before we move on to questions, does everybody understand what's on the table? Okay, great. Counselor Schechter.
Thank you. I'm okay conceptually, but I do still have an issue with the parking spaces because we really don't have a clear rational nexus for funding them unless it's on parity with the square foot. And my feeling is at this point, I have no problem perhaps limiting them to 2. I have no problem limiting the time because of snow removal. But to me, if we're going to switch from square footage and make it parity across the board for everybody using it, I would wait until we have paid parking and then we know how to value a parking place. Right now, we really don't. With paid parking, if that ever occurs, then we know what a parking space is worth in Glenwood. until then, I think the parklet idea is great. And to me personally, disagreeing with some of my peers, I think having the outside dining and being able to expand it beyond the bridge is worth giving up the spots and let people walk a couple blocks. So that's my feeling. Until we have paid parking, I would not impose a fee. I would just keep the square footage, and perhaps limit it to 2 spots per restaurant for now.
Counselor Zelinski.
So I have a question about the enforcement, because of the whole liquor license, if they pay that monthly fee for the parking, is that something that we can? Because it's gonna
Yeah,
amend their
it's,
square
so
footage.
the way that we would handle it is, it's an annual lease, but the lease rate would be determined on the number of months that they actually occupy the spaces.
So this is a manageable fee structure based on how we do business.
Yes.
Okay.
Counselor Kell.
Let's see. Now, I was thinking about Sumner's question. Oh, there was one thing that we discussed in the work session. And I will agree with you. I support the on-street parking, but I also acknowledge that it's a burden on some of the surrounding businesses to lose those parking spaces. It just means people have to walk a little bit further. So I think that the additional fee is justified, and it doesn't seem to be overly burdensome based on what we've heard or talked about tonight. So because it will be prorated to the 9 months a year versus the 12 months a year for the parking. The one thing we talked about in the work session was the use it or lose it. And I don't know how you would enforce that or what kind of time frame you'd put, but if that, parking space is sitting there not used for 2 or 3 months, I'd say it gets lost or,
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I would ask for a little bit of flexibility for us at the staff level, if you guys are inclined. I'm going to need to bring back a resolution for the consent agenda next time. And
Okay.
maybe we can give some thought to how to address getting them used as opposed to just occupied and unavailable.
Right. And that, I think, only applies to one of the 2 that are in use, I believe. But if Mitchell, Counselor Wyman would be amenable to just revising the motion to include staff to work on wording for that.
Use or lose? Yeah.
For kind of use it or lose it, just applying to the parking spaces.
I just don't understand how we would force it.
Well, I thought
I
they
think-
can think about that.
And it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I guess I was thinking, at one point I wrote down 250 per parking space per month, and then I, brought it back to 100. Because it needs to be a number where that restaurant wants to make darn sure that they're taking advantage of the space. And that it's right, and that it's not, oh, I get to, it's only a couple $100 a month to put my tables out there to draw attention to the fact that I have a restaurant, right? To kind of
Right.
create that visibility or whatnot. So it needs to be a good number. I think instead of a use it or lose it sort of approach to things, that it's a good faith sort of effort on the restaurant's parts. And maybe 100 isn't enough per space per month, or maybe it's fine. But I think that the idea is that we impose a high enough sort of price tag on that spot that the restaurant makes every effort to use it
Right.
to recoup that expense.
And I think maybe the price that you've suggested is we're there, because it is an increase over what they're paying now. I guess I see the use it or lose it wouldn't be so much that we would have to enforce it, but it is a requirement that the restaurant is aware of, and they're aware that when,
And maybe what it is, it's simply when we look at renewals, that's a factor that we look at.
it comes up.
And
at
maybe
that
it doesn't require
That's a
anything
great
other
idea.
than that.
Use it in the last season. Do you really want to read it? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I also don't want to disincentivize by making it too high. So Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, I think, as far as a public investment, what's the return to the taxpayer? And I think, parking space, the last time 3-4 years ago, we had the conversation, I think it was 60,000 is, to your point, Sumner. The cost of a parking space was 60,000 to build one.
Yeah.
And so, and again, that was pre-COVID, that was pre-everything. So who knows what it is now? But in a garage, correct. But we have built a garage. And if we're going to create more parking capacity in our downtown, it will only have to come by going up. We have no more lane downtown. And so, I guess my question is, as a resident, as a taxpayer, if I spend $60,000, if I invest $60,000 of my own money and the public's money is $1,400 for these parklets, is that a return that I would personally accept? I'm sorry, what's that?
1,200.
Okay, excuse me. More to the point, would I accept a $1,200 return on a $60,000 investment? And so I certainly would never accept that return of, what is that, Sumner, 2% return investment on my. Yes, I know, I'm still taking my comments. So you can push your button now. So that's probably not something that I would do on its face. Yes, there is trick to someone's to a point in my ear. There is a trickle down effect of potential additional tax revenue, assuming that those people would not eat at other places or would not eat inside or eat later. But I guess my other question is the question of fairness and what public resources are we going to spend on restaurants that don't have this ability at all because of 82's right away? What happens when Treads one day wants to become Treads Brew Pub? And they want outdoor dining. They do not have that option. So can they come to us for public support? What is Native Son? What are we to tell Native Son? What are we to tell other restaurants that just do not have that ability? But so I don't want to be the only no vote against this. I'd like to support this, but I would love to get to yes. And the way I could get to yes is a small minor thing that might even help Mitchell with his use it or lose it. If you could bump that up to the original, double it from 175 to 350, I could get to yes. If that's a friendly amendment.
For the square footage?
Just a square footage alone, just 50 cents more, you could get me to yes. And if you don't, then okay, but that's how I can get to yes.
Thank you, Counselor Gotis. Counselor Dim.
Oh, yeah. My turn. I forgot. No, I think I remember. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Counselor Weimer, I can get behind the 150. I can get behind the parking at $100 for 6 months. I think it's fine if you do the math. The parking space is 9 by 19. I think it increases the overall rent by about $87 per space. Per month, that's not too bad. That's doable. Like Mayor Wusso said, we don't want to de-incentivize. I think it's very important. I would be happy with the 250, the ones per square footage that you mentioned first. But I'm not sure I'm going to let that break the deal for me. But 250, I'd be more amicable to.
For parking space?
No, for the square footage instead of 3. Because it seemed like you got the wrong number and then you thought 250 was good. And then it's like, oh, no, maybe I should go to 3. So I'd be okay with the 250 that you mentioned first. And then the other thing, the lose it or use it, I think the $100 is enough to make sure that you want to spend that money to get your fences up and your tables out. And the last thing, and I'm sure it's somewhere, and I said it in the workshop, and I'm saying it again, no storage, absolutely no storage. I don't know if that needs to go in this resolution or if it needs to go anywhere else, but we can
put it in the lease.
Put it in the lease. No more storage in any of these places. You got to animate it. You got to use it as intended. So if you're willing to change to 250, I would like that. But if not, I understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's $3. I move my decimal point.
You had it at $3.
You had it at $3. He's asking for 250.
I want it 350.
Yeah.
Which is where it is, which is where it's at.
No,
it's at
you
3.
had it at 3. The motion you had was for 3.
The motion you had is at 3. Counselor Gotis asked for 350. Counselor Dame asked for 250. So you're right in the middle. Counselor. Okay, stay at $3. Counselor Schechter.
A question again, I'm still a little confused on the parklet, proposed parklet. Is it $100 a month for 12 months? It's $1,200 per space, or is it 600?
It
What is
is it's an annual lease at $100 per month of use.
Right?
So if you only want to use it for 4 months, it would be $400. If you use it for 9 months, it'd be $900.
And it can be prorated like that, even though it's tied to the liquor license?
Yeah, it would
It's
be
just an annual lease, but
but
it's,
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
all right, thank you. That was my question at this point.
Okay, great. I'm gonna make one request. I'm gonna ask, earlier tonight, it was suggested that we just put in automatic increase and every year. Yeah, and I was gonna put it out there that we do a 5% and see if anybody would amend their motion and their second. Counselor Day.
Clarification, Madam Mayor. So from $1.75, 5% up,
It would be 5%
but
annually.
but base was $1.75 from there on up.
No.
Or
it
you
would
want to
be
go to the
three
three?
Whatever the final, I'll
Okay.
just put that out there, that whatever the final price per square foot is,
Tonight.
that we write it in, that it be an annual increase of 5%, so that we don't, in 10 years or 5 years or whatever, we don't have any increase and it has to jump significantly, but just build it in.
Follow-up question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Is this for square footage and the parking
This is
$100?
just for square footage,
Just for
but I'm
square-
receptive to hearing about parking fees too. If people want to increase those as well, I'll just put that on the table to see if there's any feedback on that. Counselor Godus is next in line. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd support the 5%. I think that's really smart policy in general. I don't see why we would treat the two different, the parklet
Great.
and the things differently. So
Put 'em both.
yeah, I'd say just apply it uniformly, with my opinion.
So then, before we continue on, I'll get it back in front of the original motion maker and their second and see if that's something you're receptive to. Hold on.
I have
one
a
second.
question. Why 5% versus CPI?
Oh, we could do CPI. I don't care. I just threw out a number.
I'd rather, because, economies go up and they go down, and if you're in a downturn, do we want to hit
Yeah.
the 5% or
Great point.
look more at
Yeah.
what's going on?
I
So
like that. I think more
I
than
could support
anything,
CPI.
yeah, I just want to see it regularly increase.
Okay.
Um,
So I will propose an amendment to my motion to include for both square footage off-street as well as on-street parking leases, an annual adjustment reflective of CPI.
Counselor Kelp.
Will amend my second.
Annual adjustment of what?
CPI cost,
Okay, CPI.
Consumer Price Index.
Okay. Okay, at this point, we have all had an opportunity to speak. Is there anybody who wants to add anything else before we call the question? And do we need clarity at this point? Okay, great. Carl, why don't you go ahead and give us a clarification?
The motion on the table is to increase parking space leases to $100 per month on an annual lease, but only charged for those months that it is in use. To increase right-of-way whatever the appropriate term is, sidewalk usage to $3 per square foot on an annual basis. And that both of those be subject to increases based on CPI.
Can I use it or lose it?
And use it
Discussion.
or lose it, it would be, what's that? And the fee would be doubled from 175 to 150.
Mhm.
And we're going to address using it, whether it's being used on renewals, and address also in the lease, just how it's used in terms of activation and not storage for restaurant seat, chairs or whatever.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarity. City Clerk Ryan Muse, did you get all that? All good?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. With that, I will go ahead and call the question. Are we good?
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Godus. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Dame. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaupt. Yes, Counselor Schechter. It passes 6-1.
Thank you so much, all. Thank you, community development staff. Thanks so much for the public for coming this evening. We appreciate all of you. Okay, we're gonna bring it back to council. And we are popping back up to item 15, which is resolution 2023-35, setting the 1041 permit fee.
I didn't know Hannah wasn't going to be here tonight. So I'm doing a lot more presenting than I thought I would. So when we adopted 1041 regulations a couple of years ago, one of the things that we did not get into the fee schedule was an actual application cost for that. We have a application coming in for a 1041 permit. We're suggesting that we set it at the same rate as a major development permit, which is the $3,200, I think, that is in the resolution. That's it.
Okay, back to council with Counselor Kaus. First question.
I was going to make a motion.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Others have questions. Okay,
have a quick question.
Okay,
okay, go
so
ahead.
we'll hold off on Counselor Kaus' motion and we'll start with Counselor Zelinski.
Please excuse my ignorance, but I don't know what a 1041 permit is.
1041 permits under state statute. The reason they're called 1041 is that was the bill number that it was adopted. It allows us to have enhanced regulations on what are called areas of state interest. So that would be transportation corridors, utility corridors, things like that. And it allows us to kind of ratchet up a little bit the level of our review and dig into it a little bit more deeply. It's primarily focused on impacts to the environment.
Got it.
So we really started looking at this in the context of that large thing up on the side of the mountain. Also some large utility rebuilds going through town, as well as kind of logging trucks going through a number of these big projects that this would give us a level of regulatory authority over in those regulations. And I can go back and find the memos we did at the time of adoption. But anyway, so it is things that we don't normally traditionally permit. You don't think of it, it's not like a, housing being built. It is say a major new utility line going through, a gas line, main going through town kind of thing that isn't part of our service, part of our franchise, but is just being punched through, gives us better regulatory authority over that to address impacts to our community.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Kaut, back at you.
Okay, I will move that we adopt resolution 2023-35 for amending the City of Glenwood Springs Development Review Fee Schedule and setting the permit application fees related to permits for areas and activities of state interest.
And follow the staff recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, of an increase of permit fees to 3,200.
3,200. Yep.
Perfect. Is there, Counselor Godus.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. You're fine. Okay.
I heard the eyes.
Yep, you're fine. You're totally fine. We got that one. We had it. It's on the record.
So it failed.
You don't want to tell Hannah that.
Okay,
That's up to you.
moving on to item 17. This is the update and action regarding city manager search. Counselor Godus.
I move pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 3.5, to name Steve Boyd the finalist for the position of city manager for the city of Glenwood Springs. Order the clerk to publish notice of the finalist's name, make available to the public upon request the finalist application material, and direct that no offer of appointment or employment shall be made prior to the expiration of the 14-day notice period.
Counselor Dame.
I second that.
Any discussion or a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, a motion. Yeah, I know, thank you. Any questions? Okay, we can call that question. No questions.
Yay, it passes 7-0.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Very good. Thank you. We will move on to council comments. Let's just go down the line. Which end do we want to start? Let's start with Counselor Godus. Everybody can turn on their mics if they want. Counselor Godus.
I have been incredibly verklempt the last several months, driving through town, seeing new stop signs pop up unexpectedly, navigating speed humps that should not be there because there are already stop signs there anyway. Having a stop sign at Midland and 14th where there should be a yield sign. It's incredibly frustrating to somebody who's just trying to get through town. So I think, and additionally, the 35 miles an hour that the speed limit changed on Midland, is that a permanent change? Or is that just changing for the construction of the lift station? Because I think some of these things, I mean, I don't want to get into managing every single stop sign, but without a knowledge from the Transportation Commission on what our speed calming is and where it's at. I don't think speed calming is just throw a stop sign up wherever we want to. Sometimes it's just enforcement. Sometimes it's construction of a road to make it more curvy, less wide. So I just think that especially the speed limit change of 35 on Midland, I hope that that's a temporary condition. But when we put that stop sign in at whatever 13th and Midland, it was told us that was a temporary condition for construction, the reconstruction of the Midland neighborhood or the Red Mountain neighborhood, and then it never went away. So I guess what I'm looking for is not, is a recommendation or maybe, a recommendation from the Transportation Commission before I just start seeing more stop signs and maybe in my neighborhood where it impacts me in my backyard. Thank you. The other thing I thought we had asked a couple months ago. I know I had asked in June about what grants we were applying for, what grants we were not applying for through sustainable strategies. And I was told we should get a report or have Ashley report to us what we're pursuing, what we're not. That was in June.
Do you want an update on that?
No, I want I don't need a monthly report, but certainly a quarterly report.
Well, I have a date that she's coming to present to council. That's why.
I think that would be great.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
So that's fortunate.
Okay.
But then I think, maybe monthly. I mean, if we're applying for enough grants, just to get an email, a couple paragraphs, here's what I'm applying for. Here's what we hope to accomplish. Here's the projects, because I think we get surprised when we get a $600,000 grant. And I read about that grant through a newsletter for a different governmental organization before I got notice to it.
Yeah.
So
So I'm going to just jump in really quickly and say your point is well taken. And so I had already felt it. I had asked if she could come. We have her on the calendar. I think it's the first meeting of November. Is that correct, Ryan? I think that's what it is.
Let me look.
Yeah. In addition, we've made the request to get updates. So I appreciate it because I also felt that that was a deficiency in how we just communicated. So thank
Cool.
you for bringing that up.
thanks. And then the last thing, we had talked, I think 2 months ago about having within the next month, a conversation, a work session about, I think Counselor Shatner's, excuse me, Sumner. He made a comment and his comment I support about, having a work session about potentially taking the tourism contract out for bid, seeing what that would look like. And I think we had asked for that to be in the next month or so, and that just hasn't happened.
And we weren't able to put it on the calendar because it was full enough. So it actually is on, I want to say it's maybe end of November, early December. Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Great. All my questions are being answered.
great.
November 2nd.
Thank you. Counselor Zelinski.
I just wanted to, I don't have much, but I was at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting last night, and there was a brief staff presentation about the Noche Latina Festival that was under the bridge on September 16th. I was out of town, so I couldn't go. That's the first year that it was in that location. I think last year was the inaugural year, but it was in a different location. They had he said more than 450 attendees. It was wildly successful.
That's so.
And that's what I've heard. And so I just really want to like, give like a huge shout out to Parks and Rec for that event. And also just express how pleased I am to see that segment of our community be honored and engaged. And I'm excited for what can come from that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. And Gladys, who works
Yes.
for our Parks and Rec department, she also is a Jedi. She is such a hard worker and so good and so passionate at what she does. So
Awesome.
shout out to us.
Awesome. So shout out to Gladys.
Yeah. Okay, Counselor Dame.
One is a question, and I think it probably goes to you two, back to sustainable strategies. I mentioned earlier, we were in DC and we talked to the National Endowment of the Arts with multiple funding options available, which I hope Ashley's going to give me a summary and so on. If the art director or Rod with the recreation department wants to go after some of these grants, can they do that just because we're on retainer with them, or does it have to go through us first?
I think that's probably one of the things when Ashley's here that we can talk about is the structure of kind of what, we have a retainer agreement for, I believe, a certain number of grants. S2 always seems to overdo it. They do more than they're actually on retainer for. But one of the things that I know in other jurisdictions that I work with them in is kind of, deciding as part of you guys' strategic planning, what grants you want to go after, particularly the big ones, and then kind of holding out a few of those probably for opportunities that come up in various areas.
Okay.
So I think that might be a good conversation with both Ashley when she's here about what works best for them in terms of communication about that. But then also, don't we have a strategic thing coming up?
Yeah, but I guess since Ashley is coming, is it okay to invite like the art director and people that are usually not used to this kind of service?
It's up to you guys. I would think that would be great. I do think that it's important for you all to decide what your priorities are, because you can suck up, like there's so much grant money out there right now that you can suck up, whatever it is, 10, 12, 15 grants a year and maybe miss your priorities.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I get it.
So
That's why I
that's,
wanted to ask to see what's the best approach.
And you'll notice the date is after our strategic planning session too. So
Right.
we'll have an opportunity to meet as a council prior to being able to talk to her, and we can provide her with whatever outcomes are successful from that meeting.
And the second thing I'd like to say is, and Steve kind of set the tone, but I just want to point out that we went from mental health in schools to watershed to affordable housing, fee waivers, to a cul-de-sac discussion, to outdoor dining, to a state matter, and then a city manager in a matter of 3 hours. And everybody in this room, including us, were all Jedis. Because we all did this masterfully. Thank you to all of you for still playing very well together. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And that goes to everybody that was in this room. Thank you.
Sometimes we get the packet the weekend before, and it's pretty complex data. It's built on the foundation, and our staff is so knowledgeable about what they do and what they present to us. So it is really special and solid. Okay, great. I'm gonna move on and talk about 2 items very quickly. One is that our last meeting, we approved having our core requests on our website. And we're getting great feedback, and people are watching us across the state because they're dealing with the same things that we are. And that is that people want transparency and they want easy access to documents. So with that in mind, I do have one request. When I'm on there, I would love to see that they're available. The documents are available. Hold on one second. Before you go. Because I know that like the way that the packet is presented, it's very easy for the public to pull up the packet as a PDF. So if there's something along that derivative that we could just upload it, that would be, I think, superior to where we're at now. Cause I'm still feeling like getting feedback and people want it.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. We ran into an ADA issue, which is what we do with the packet is fully compliant with the digital ADA access issues. I can't guarantee that the data that we put up on an open records request is going to be the same And so we would have to modify that data to make it compliant to be on the website, which is why we've just asked that people shoot Ryan an email and say, I would like the same materials that were in record request, on 6/23/2023. And that was a great catch on the staff's part, that we need to be compliant on that digital ADA access, and that we couldn't do that by just having the documents available that way. And so we're trying to thread that needle. So they just need to shoot Ryan an email, and it says that at the bottom, just contact Ryan for additional information
We can't just put a disclaimer that these documents, but if someone wants them, because what you're
if
saying.
somebody wants them, it's different. It's a different thing if we email it, if they ask for them and we just email them to them.
Yeah.
Than it is if it's up on the website as a fully accessible document to the public, which is what it has to be. And there are certain guidelines around that as to format. We'd have to go through and make sure that all acronyms are spelled, are not acronyms, but are the full, phonetics, that kind of thing. And just from a staff timing perspective, we didn't feel like that was the best use of time. So we wanted to give this a try.
I'd like to keep this on the top of our list, because I think the ultimate goal that when in presenting this is that they would be so easily accessible. So I want to continue pushing down towards having them be just one click away. Okay. So let's see if that's something that, if there's some creativity, and if others are watching us saying, let's do something similar, maybe they can help solve the problem and we can look into it. Okay. And then the next item is that I am currently doing the Aspen Institute Hearst Leaders Forum, which once again, it's always an honor to be part of a community and a valley that has such incredible resources and is so passionate about training and teaching the leaders of tomorrow and also of today. And just kudos to the organization and also the people who are choosing to commit their time to it. Counselor Godus has also done this training. How many years ago was that for you? 2 years ago. Okay. And I find it very rich, and I don't know that I ever read Plato, but I can now say I have. So, oh yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. It really great. So a big thank you to the community for that. Council Weimer.
Mr. Hanlon, I know you have a lot going on, but I want to remind you of one of your top priorities with this question. Have you caught the goats?
I called on
You have the lasso.
the goats.
I got, that's funny.
No, Steve Boyd, acting city, interim city manager, has an update about goats. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete failure of an update. As it turns out, this is a little bit more complicated than you would think. We did reach out to a number of entities, including the Department of Wildlife, who says that these are not wild creatures, they're
not.
domesticated.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that they can do about it. I think the way that we're gonna finally get it resolved is that Ryan and I are gonna go out there, round them up, put them in the back of my 4Runner and take them up to care, drop them off. Yeah, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We don't have it solved yet. I mean, it's a hard one,
That
but
was,
we'll get it done.
you were joking about your 4Runner and all
Yes,
that.
I'm kidding about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Goats inside a 4Runner.
Okay. Okay, great.
We'll keep working on it.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna let Counselor Zelinski jump back in really quickly because apparently she's savvy on goats.
Well, I've been following this because
Yeah.
I am so invested in the fate of these goats. And Steve's wife actually helped identify where they were yesterday afternoon. And there is somebody that's going around, so they kind of have put little baited areas, hoping that they will be able to draw the goats into like being consistent there. They found the goats, but they weren't able to successfully capture the goats. But there is a private community citizen that is actively trying to make sure these goats get to a safe space. Yes.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
This is little Sebastian.
Little Sebastian.
This is good stuff. The amount of energy invested into these goats. Hey, Shelley and I were at a transportation. Shelley and I were in Transportation Commission on Tuesday morning and they were right out here. Yeah, totally. do you have anything else?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, Counselor Cow.
Find the goats. Yes. All right, mine's not quite as much fun as that, but Transportation Commission we had this week. And there's lots of discussion and excitement about TDM. So I did update the commission. So there's another conversation going on that kind of will relate to our TDM, and that's this Garfield County Transportation Group that includes all the towns, cities in Garfield County itself, CDOT and RAFTA. And our hope is to come up with solutions so we can reduce the number of single occupant vehicles on I-70 and 82, kind of for the long term. So CDOT had 4 or 5 representatives on our initial call, and they're very interested in the conversation. So we're trying to figure out ways to fund facilitation of this group and how we get that going. So that is in the works, just to update everyone, and we'll be meeting again in about a month. The other question that came up in Transportation Commission, again related to TDM, is status of our managed parking system and the technology and equipment that goes along with that. And I know we had kind of council had given support for that for the 2023, and it didn't happen. So my request is just, can we either have a work session or an update on council where we are with that? I don't believe it's in the 2024 budget. How do we get it there? Or is there capacity and bandwidth to do it? And don't have to answer it tonight, but if we could get that on a future agenda, that would be great. And hopefully not November 2nd, just because I won't be here since I'm asking for it. Okay. Note to self, if possible.
Anything else, Counselor Cow?
No, thanks.
Counselor Schachter.
Thank you. I have several things. I'll try and make it short. First of all, kudos, since Matt's here. I just drove by 26th Street and I thought I was in a different town. It's all repaved and beautiful, and it was one of the worst in the city. So, and there's several others going on, and segueing to that, looking ahead to our street tax, without putting too much burden, I hope in the near term, we'll have something in our hands that'll show what we've done the last few years. And even something graphic pictures would be, as we start setting the stage for that, because that's huge, but nice job. Without discussion right now, Counselor Godus, I'll take all the calming, whatever form it is I can find, stop signs, red lights, speed bumps. And I'm for the record, at this point in time, when we have the tour, I'm not leaning toward tourism bid. What I'd much rather see in the discussion coming up is the use of the reserves that may alleviate some pressure on the general fund for downtown uses. I think from a timely point of view, that'll be something I'll be looking at. A couple other new things, and I don't know how to bring this to agenda. I've mentioned before, I'd like to see short-term limits drop since we're so far below our ceiling. And I don't know if is that usurping P and Z, or is that something I can drive a discussion or motion from the dais here? I don't know.
I guess it depends on which thing you're changing. And maybe what we should do is maybe you and I can just have a conversation about what you would like to see change,
Okay.
and then we can bring it back to council for them to decide if they want to take that
Yeah,
up or
I'm
not.
talking about the number of the total
Yeah.
capacity. Yeah, I'll just, so also related to that, because I don't know how to bring things up because I'm still a rookie. We do not have a public safety. We have plenty of fees. It costs people a ton of money to develop here, but we don't have a public safety fee. And I don't know how to initiate that discussion either, how it comes on board, but it's a discussion I think that is needed, pro or con.
Well, before you move on, I think what we could do is just ask if on both of those, I mean, I know Carl just threw out the one, but if you want to see a work session on these items, we could absolutely do that. We
Well-
could say a public safety work session, and just do it at the first of the year.
Yeah, and then, as we build that into budget
Yeah.
discussions, as far as the other, I'll talk to Carl. I don't want to usurp P and Z.
Yeah,
it's
and that's,
clear-
and that's more of a process for P and Z
Yeah,
to be, to have input on.
The other thing also related to P and Z, you've heard me say it before. I've become more and more, as I look at this, I'm more and more in favor of as many RO restrictions as we can legally and fairly put on any development.
Mhm.
And that's not an AMI restriction. And so one thing I'd consider revisiting if we can was our building type requirements and say, hey, among these 7 or 9 choices, you have to pick at a given choice, at least one of them has to be between these two, 35% AMI restricted, which probably nobody would pick. Nevertheless, that's a choice, or all RO or some version like that. So those are things I'd like to bring back
Well,
somehow.
Here's a question for you. Were you able to look at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting just from last Tuesday?
No,
Because they discussed so many of these affordable housing, owner occupied, density. It might not be a bad thing to integrate into a conversation that also includes some of their recommendations as well. Because I think yours is a little along the lines of some of the things they talked about.
Yeah, I think we're slated, which Counselor Cap, I didn't know you were going to be on the first meeting, and I'm glad that we picked the timing we did. We're going to have a discussion around what was at the Planning Commission on some density bonus, some zoning issues. That's going to be coming on the second meeting in November. I think that's going to be.
we'll have it here,
Yeah.
workshop.
Yeah, no, well, it's probably going to be on the dais for you.
Okay.
Maybe we'll bring it to a work session.
We should.
Yeah, we probably should. It
Yeah.
was a great conversation at the Planning Commission. I had the good fortune of, I was covering for Richard this Tuesday. So I was actually gonna mention that in my comments, that it was a really good meeting, but
And it's not a bad one to go back and listen to that section of the.
yeah, because it
report.
is legislative, so it's
Yeah.
okay for you to do that, as opposed to you,
Yeah.
none of you are listening to actual land use applications.
Good.
Yeah.
The last kudo would be to our utility box art project. It's going on. They're out there drawing it. It's phenomenal. So
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
It's fun to see these projects come to fruition and all the hard work that goes into it from our boards and commissions. So
That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, moving on to staff, city manager and city attorney.
I just wanted to say thanks, everybody, for all your help with the budget process. The next step is that we will have a public hearing on the 26th. So we have kind of an extra week. I will try to get, a document that is a little more helpful than just a stack of numbers together and send it out to you within the next week or so. And I'd encourage you to, maybe wait until that comes out before you spend a lot more time with the budget. If anybody has any questions at all, we're always here. We're always available. So don't hesitate at all to reach out. Thanks.
Two, maybe 3 quick things. One, I was surprised that none of you mentioned that you had an amazing sit-down lunch with the governor this week.
Oh.
And talked about I thought it was an incredibly positive conversation around issues, primarily transportation and housing. And the follow-up from that, I had a great meeting with a number of advisors to the governor the next day on Zoom. I didn't realize that I was going to get like the cast of thousands. So I want to say thank you to them, because they're making a lot of time for us up here and the issues that we're facing and talking about potential solutions. So that was fantastic. The other one was, and we missed it on the agenda, so I will just raise it. If there happens to be a social gathering after this meeting, where is council going to be socially gathered?
Counselor Godus, who's in charge of that?
As the social chair, the only title I have left, we will be at Docks. And if for some reason Docks is not open because of lack of employees, because of lack of affordable housing, I will put a notice on their door of where
We've moved on to.
we will be.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you for clarifying that as well. Okay, just as a reminder to kind of go back to the very beginning of the meeting, we did change this and we are no longer doing an executive session this evening. That was published. We're taking it off. And so that means that I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Can you do Mike's, please?
I so move.
And a second.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting is over.
Thank you. Beautiful.